Ms. Inch, you all set? All good? Madam Clerk, ready to go? Council? Good to go? I got 7:01, so. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the March 24th, 2025 Portsmouth Town Council meeting. If you would all please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for our men and women in harm's way.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Before we get started, we have our emergency evacuation procedures. If they're in the event of emergency and we have to leave the building, we have 3 exits. One is behind Mr. Reese over here. One is the door you came through, and one is behind you to your left, our right. We all exit the building, and please go over to the school department building and wait for further instruction from our first responders. Madam Clerk, we have our roll call.
Mr. Gleason,
Here.
Ms. Blank,
Here.
Ms. McDowell,
Here.
Ms. Patton,
Here.
Mr. Pereira,
Present.
Mr. Reese,
Here.
Mr. Hamilton.
I am here. President's executive summary. Before tonight's meeting, we had 2 pieces of information in the executive session. There were 2 votes taken, both passed unanimously 7-0. Next up, we have our consent agenda.
Mr. President, if there aren't any questions, I move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Now we are sitting as the Board of License Commissioners. First up, we have an entertainment license for Ragged Island Brewing Company, 54 Bristol Ferry Road for the Ragged Island Music Festival to be held June 7th and 8th, 2025 from 12 to 8:30.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, we have St. Barnabas Church Annual Festival, 1697 East Main Road from June 20th and 22nd, 2025. And then also after that, we have their victuals license for St. Barnabas Church. I'm going to do them both at the same time, if you don't mind.
Well, I think there's going to be a fee waiver on the second one, but not on the first
Okay,
as requested. So if you want to do them separately,
sure.
I would make a motion to accept the entertainment license for St. Barnabas Church.
Second.
Mr. President, I filed a conflict of interest form with Ms. West regarding the St. Barnabas Animal Festival because I am a volunteer there as well as a parishioner. So
Okay.
rather be safe than sorry.
Sounds good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0-1. And now on for the victuals license for St. Barnabas Church.
Motion to approve
Second.
with fee waiver.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0-1 again. Next up, we have peddler's license. We have 3 different peddler's license for mobile food establishments with FYR Foods LLC doing business as FYR Grill, 84 Mulberry Drive in Wakefield.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have Farm to Sandwich LLC doing business as Curbside Creperie. Okay, glasses time.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And next we have Yappa LLC doing business as Tiola Food Truck, 39 Rhode Island Avenue, Unit 3, Newport.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Motion to adjourn as the Board of License Commissioners.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, we have our minutes from our last meeting of 3/10/25. Mr. Gleason, you have a question on those?
Yes, just a couple of, for clarification, I would suggest, under the, appointments and recognitions that we change Mr. on the name of Lancarge to Peter Lancarge for one clarification. And under new business 5, which states here, discuss efforts to have RIDOT install a walkway behind the existing guardrail from Morris Ave to Anthony Road. No votes taken. To delete that because we discussed that and it went in as part of the STIP, just for clarification. So if there's agreement, I motion to accept the minutes with those 2 changes and any others that are welcome.
Madam Clerk.
Well, technically, you didn't vote on A, so since it was separate and it wasn't all voted on, you wouldn't need the vote for A. You'd already just discussed it as to put it through,
Right, the request was put into the STIP in the main agenda item.
right?
So what's your suggestion?
So
To
I
agree
think
with that or
Mr.
do something different?
I think Mr. Gleason's concern is that it looks as if we didn't do anything with that item.
Well, you just had no votes,
Right.
so.
So would it be better to, rather than saying no votes taken, to clarify it was added to the main STIP in the original?
I'll listen to it and go from
No,
there.
But
from
we did request it as part of the STIP. in the-
Right, but in the motion, I'll have to listen to how the motion was read.
Okay. So do we want to table these until the next meeting then
I
instead?
mean,
Is that-
all it is listening to it, so
Okay,
we can.
We can trust her.
okay,
It's fine by me.
all right,
Second that.
all right. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, we have our town administrator's report. Mr. Rayner.
Good evening, Mr. President, Town Council, ladies and gentlemen. The Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns Annual Convention was held last Thursday, and most department heads and managers were able to participate in the convention and in the training sessions that were offered. 4 sessions were conducted throughout the day in multiple training sessions, training events in each session, and they varied from topics such as harnessing AI and municipal innovation, financing capital needs, housing for the aged, and cybersecurity. So a very good event. With respect to the budget, the proposed FY26 budget is in the final days of preparation. A red team was selected to review the draft, and we will meet and discuss further refinements tomorrow. Hard copies of the proposed budget will be distributed to the council on Friday, followed immediately by posting on the finance webpage. Budget meetings, just as a reminder, will be held the week of April 28th. In regard to the Prudence Island Ferry Parking Interlocal Cooperation Commission, a kickoff meeting of that commission was held last Wednesday. During the meeting, we framed the issue and we discussed possible approaches to mitigating the issue for the Prudence Island residents. We identified areas for further study, and we will convene again after the budget hearings in April. And then lastly, with regard to the Portsmouth High School roof, as previously reported, multiple areas of the high school roof have failed, causing significant leaks and disruptions within the building during rain and snow events. So with regard to the latest developments, the school administration has scheduled a bid opening for roof repairs on April 3rd. To ensure the safety and well-being of students and staff, air quality testing is being conducted regularly. A professional cleaning company is treating indoor spaces, and they did that last week. And custodians are giving extra attention to affected areas to maintain cleanliness. And then lastly, maintenance staff remains vigilant and are addressing any new leaks as they occur. While most of the school remains operational, the auditorium is currently offline and will remain so until repairs are complete. And Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Mr. Rayner, I
Mr.
have a
Reese.
question.
Sure.
Is on the budget update. Do you think we will make our 2.5% tax levy increase this year? I think that was our target. How are you foreseeing that projected
The
out?
increase, well, there's a number of percentages. So I'd rather wait until Friday because we're going to have another meeting tomorrow, but the overall increase in the levy will be, I believe, less than 2.5%.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Patton?
So I have a question, as far as, will the department heads be coming for us to present their budget and?
It's not the way it works. The department heads will all be present, but this is the town administrator proposed budget, and I will be briefing the budget to you during those budget hearings.
So if we have questions, we just,
If there are questions for inquiry, absolutely, the department heads will be here.
okay, thank you.
Ms. McCall? Okay. All right. Any other questions? Mr. Rayner, can you just give us a quick update? I know this isn't on there, about curbside and folks coming in and getting their stickers. Can they be mailed in? Can people mail a check? Fill a form out, mail a check, all that good stuff, because there's a lot of information rolling around. Just want to make sure it's
Sure.
100%.
Absolutely. I mean, the signups are ongoing. Ideally, we wanted people to be signed up by the end of this month, this week. We're not on track to get the 4,000 signed up at the end of this week. The issue with that is not that the program fails, that doesn't happen, but we're trying to finalize what the routes will be and where to deliver the bins. We're fully aware that there's probably going to be a crunch of signups as more and more people become aware of the fact that they're going to have to either sign up for curbside or the transfer station, and that that crunch will probably come in June, and then most definitely in the beginning of July when nobody's picking up your trash. So that's going well. With regard to how you can sign up, there's really two ways. You can mail a form in with either a deposit or the full payment, or you can come to the window in town hall and do that. We received a lot of questions about why can't we do this online? It was just a bridge too far. We just couldn't get there and implement a sign-up system, contract with somebody and get the equipment needed to be able to process the credit cards. And obviously, when the town or a government agency accepts a credit card, there is an additional fee for that we pass on to the consumer. We hope to get that settled in the coming months, but we just couldn't do it in the time to get the signups for this session.
Being that you're anticipating a crunch in June, are we looking at potentially Saturday office hours for folks who can't get here on Thursday night? For folks, town hall is open every Thursday night till 6:30 to help those folks, those of us who work for a living, can get here and get payments and go to the clerk's office if need be. Or
Well, everything's on the table, and that will obviously help the people who sign up for the transfer station. It won't necessarily help people who are signing up for curbside because we're trying to develop the route. So let's say a resident comes in on June 30th and says, I should have signed up earlier, but I'm going to sign up now. Absolutely, please come in and sign up. But there's no guarantee with the program starting in July 1st that we're going to be able to get you a bin delivered and get you listed on a route that following week. There's just no guarantee, and that's what we've been saying for a couple months now. So keeping extra hours won't alleviate that situation, but historically what we've done is we've had extra hours so that people could use the transfer station because you got to have that sticker on your window to be able to get in.
Mr. President,
Ms. Perry?
not to belabor this subject too much longer, but what are we currently at in terms of, I know that full payment isn't probably a good indicator, but at least down payments. For the program.
Number of signups right now, the last I looked was about almost 600, maybe Matt, 1,040. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
While
Gleason.
we're on the subject, just a question. I know there was a conversation recorded in the Portsmouth Times that I think was helpful. There was just one area I questioned. Initially, we were talking about a truck for recycling only, a truck for trash only. Is that still the plan, or are you going to do the two?
It'll
bin
be
truck?
the truck will have 2 compartments for recycling and waste, and then there'll also be a separate truck for yard waste.
Yard waste, okay. Thank you.
So it is only going to be one truck, because in one of the discussions, it was 2 separate trucks.
Yeah.
So it is only one truck with the sliding compartment.
That's what they told us in our last meeting with them,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. Am I going to be sorry I opened up this question, Mr. Mr.
No, never.
No,
never.
yes? No, okay.
So we're looking at a flat roof, Paul Kesson, 3241 East Main Road. I worked at a company that had 26 acres of flat roof. Surafil, I think, is the name that everybody's using with a 40-year life. Everybody's gotten away from EDPM, I think. I don't know whether it's possible to use that as a discretionary measure if your vendors come in, but a 40-year life on a roof is a good thing. There's one bad feature to it. I'll tell you that what it is today. Typically, it's a white roof. And the seagulls think it's a place to drop quahogs.
Well,
But EPDM comes in the same colors, which are currently on the roof today. It can fracture the urethane layered roof.
well, we have a white roof at Melville now, but. and
All I'm
just-
trying to say is Serafil offers a 40-year life expectancy on a building, which could save the inside of a building.
Yeah, Mr. Casson, just for the record, I need you to state your address for.
I did.
You did.
I did.
Oh, yeah.
It was
I
in
missed
that
it.
small spreadsheet.
Yeah, well, that small spreadsheet, I still don't know how you read that thing. All right. Moving on to resignations and appointments. We have two resignations, one from Ms. Cotter on the Parks and Recreation Committee and one from Mr. Gorski on the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee. A motion to accept with regret?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. President, I would just like to make a comment. I would like to thank Tom Gorski for his time. He started on the recycling committee in 2008 when I did. So he served us 17 years and I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
The other opposite side of the coin is Ms. Cotta signed up and didn't even make one meeting. So my regrets to her as well for reasons, various reasons.
Appointments. We have appointments to the Economic Development Committee. We have one applicant and 5 openings. A motion to approve.
So
Second.
I'm not good with French, but I'm gonna say general.
Sure.
Mr. Philip Genero, I
Okay.
guess.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have an appointment for the Moorings Appeal Board of Timothy Logan.
Motion to approve, Mr. Logan.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And now we have 3 applicants who were applicants in the past for the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Mr. President, I would like to nominate Gregory Roberts Adams, who came before the committee 2 weeks ago for the Parks and Recreation appointment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. I clicked the wrong button. Give me a second. All right, next we have an appointment for Ms. Lisa Lasky to the Solid Waste and Recycling
I'd
Committee.
like to make a motion to appoint Lisa Lasky to the Solid Waste Committee.
second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We have 2 reappointments for Mr. Centillo and Mr. Pope to the Pension Advisory Committee.
So
Motion.
moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And we have a reappointment of Ms. Teresa Pinto to the Tree Committee.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. On to old business. We have a request from the Visiting Nurses Association for reconsideration of civic support.
I'd like to make a motion.
You can. Would you like to hear from the visiting
Oh.
nurses first? She's come all this way.
We don't want to disappoint her.
She visited us?
Visiting. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the town council. Thank you.
If you could
very
just do
much.
me a little favor, yeah, just get,
Sure,
you can bring
sorry.
it up a little bit
Do you
higher.
need my address?
Yes, please.
99 Duck Cove Lane, North Kingstown, Rhode Island. And thank you for allowing us to come in front of the council. I'm very apologetic for missing the last meeting. I'm sorry I had a conflict and wasn't able to attend. We're requesting reconsideration of civic support for the Visiting Nurse Home and Hospice Organization. And I know we submitted a letter with some information, but I'm happy to answer any questions because there seem to be some questions at the last meeting. So I'm happy to answer anything and talk about what we do in the town of Portsmouth, regardless of, and I know we're all aware that we sold the building on East Main Road and moved to Middletown, but we still participate and provide a good amount of care for residents of Portsmouth. So I'm here to answer any questions and ask for a reconsideration of that request for civic support.
I'd like to thank you. Your letter explained everything, every question we had, at least that I had.
Okay.
So I'm good
All
with
right.
that.
Any questions?
Just, are you receiving support now from Middletown and Newport as well?
Yes, we do.
In the same $10,000 amount?
Yes, we do receive that same.
I would like to see if we can keep the civic support total that we approved at the same level of the 748,981, which would require removing money from one of the other organizations. And I would suggest that we could do that with the Prudence Island School Foundation.
Yes, they just
I
gave
think
back
your number's
10.
wrong. Right?
No, there's a requested amount. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah,
Seven
it was-
sixty-six.
No, that's the old number.
I'd love to do that one, but.
Yeah,
no, we can't.
766, 967,
760. I'm sorry. Sorry.
766, 967.
Okay.
No, it's 802.
No, that was the requested amount. The backup is
Oh, that's
is
right.
not the revised copy.
Correct. What you had approved
That's the requested amount.
uh,
What we had approved
was 766, 967.
Thank you.
So your methodology is to take 10,000 from one other fund.
From the Prudence Island School Foundation, make that 50,571 and
Okay,
give the money to the VNS.
all right, second.
I can't make a
You
motion.
can't, I'll make the motion. That's
There you go.
And I will
So
second
moved,
it.
as they
Okay.
say.
And
And I will second it.
and they're understanding that we're going to do that.
Yes,
I requested it.
Very
yes.
good.
You should have gotten an email today.
I did. I
Okay.
just want people to know that we didn't make that decision on our own.
Because the visiting nurses also go to Prudence Island, correct?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so this supports Prudence Island as well.
Yes, we do.
All those, so this leaves the bottom line unchanged, but restores the $10,000 to the, not restores, gives the $10,000 the first year request.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Next up, we have old business number 2, which is, Haley, you have your monthly financial report.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. President and Honorable Council. As of the end of February, the town was 8 months or 66.7% through fiscal year 2025. Year-to-date general fund revenues were at 70.3%. Primary sources were third quarter tax receipts and investment income. Year-to-date general fund expenditures were at 64.6%. Primary drivers were debt service payments. As of this time, we continue to track favorably and will begin closely monitoring on a weekly basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on the financial report? I have a motion to receive and place on file.
So moved.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, we have a tree commission update from Mr. Fitzgerald or Mr. Wheeler. Which one is going to do it? Or we're going to get tag teamed? All right. Good evening, Mr. Wheeler. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Scott Wheeler, Portsmouth Tree Commission, 58 Richard Drive.
John Fitzgerald, Tree Warden, 34 Pleasant Street, Portsmouth.
And we're joined by Terry Pinto from the commission. Just first, I want to acknowledge John's contribution. He volunteers a tremendous amount of time to the town at no expense. I just saw South Kingstown just advertised for $8,800 for an annual stipend. So he certainly is well worth every penny that we pay him. As far as an update on accomplish ahead, this is sort of our busy time of the year. We're going to be distributing seedlings right outside this door on April 5th from 9 to 11. Any leftover we'll distribute on the 12th. This has really become a tradition in the town. We have people that all come and want to share photos and stories. And really for the price of about 2 trees, in this case, we're providing about 350. The council will receive invitations for our Arbor Day. We're back at Melville School this year. It's very sad. There's a young student who passed. It just attended 1 year a number of years ago. So it'll be a solemn event, but a wonderful way to celebrate that young student's impact. As far as activities of the commission throughout the year, we provide technical assistance to the DPW. We're very closely with Brian and Paul, who just do a wonderful job for our community. We did things like past year, like tag a few hundred trees at Fort Butts to work with the Battle of Rhode Island group. Technical expertise as we're facing things like beech leaf disease and other issues that the town is trying to make technical decisions about. I do want to point out sort of newest scourge that is hitting Aquidneck Island is beech leaf disease. But has been a tremendous amount of research. And we do have the means to protect beaches through a treatment that lasts every couple of years. There's going to be a presentation in early May providing the public with expertise on it if they choose to do so. There are a few prominent beech trees, whether it's the one just out in front of Town Hall or perhaps the one at Library or the Glen, that the town may want to consider investing. We can't save all of them, but it certainly would be wonderful to save a few of them. I previously appeared before the town council to talk about some new legislation that was making its way through involving Rhode Island Energy. All three commissions on the island worked together and influenced that legislation. We were not able to retain the authority of the tree wardens through state statute, but as a compromise, the legislation did recognize local ordinances. And to the degree to which we manage our public trees and advocate for our citizens, we retain that authority, and it retained a very robust notification process for private property owners who have trees on their property. So Rhode Island Energy will be notifying them. Just this past week, there was a presentation of they're currently in the process of developing standards, policies, practices, and procedures. There'll be an opportunity to comment on those until April 25th. If you think about it, the vast majority of the trees that are pruned within our community are done by Rhode Island Energy, and it affects a lot of our property owners. They are going to have a meeting by teams that allow officials from all communities to learn more, and they've promised to provide a digital copy, which I'll circulate to Brian and Paul and Mr. Rayner for comment. A couple of notable changes: they're going to begin pruning people's service lines going to people's homes, which is a good change. And they're going to be working to resolve some of the permissioning issues. Last, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our tree planting efforts. The past few years, the council has funded through the DPW some funds for planting trees, and our DPW does a wonderful job planting trees. Unfortunately, we've had to sort of give up on the spring planting season because the nature of town budgets, oftentimes we've been impacted by the budget freeze. So even though early spring, before the grass begins to grow, we have an opportunity as far as being able to allocate some DPW staff. But I just want you to be aware that we are falling behind, that we're taking down far more trees than we're planting. And we really do have a number of, when Brian, Paul, and John and I go out and visit, there's far more stumps than we can replace with trees. So it is important that the community look for, whether it be grant, not clear there's going to be a lot of federal funding coming down, but we do need to maintain that character of the town. And so hopefully we can find some way to make that gap up. But John?
No, I can't add to that. That's why you're the president and I'm the tree warden.
Thank you.
Scott, a couple of quick questions. for
Sure.
you. One, the state took down every tree on the west side of Middle Road recently. Do you know if they have any plans of replacing them?
I can assure you they don't.
Okay.
In my other, full-time job in Newport, I think anyone who's gone by the Pell Bridge sees all the trees falling all over that so we're really trying to, get RIDOT to be more engaged when it comes to landscaping. But generally, there's right now very little attention when it comes to replanting unless it's part of a larger project. And it really is important, you know, as we're on the front end of projects, when we're, you know, working with the state, that we really require landscaping as part of the mitigation, part of the efforts. Unfortunately, they no longer have a landscape division at the administration level. It's all basically in maintenance. So where decades ago, there was a landscape architect in the administration, they contract out for all of that. So it really is a shame that whether it be removal of hazardous trees or replanting, unfortunately, it's not one of the priorities for RIDOT, and a number of us are trying to encourage them to be a little bit more progressive.
And then if you have a ballpark, what would it cost? And is it nematodes that they get spray on the tree, the beech trees?
Yeah, so the great news is a product that we've been injecting in trees for decades. Arbortech works very well. We've been quoted at and I'm sure Portsmouth would be able to take advantage for communities on the island, $27 per inch of DBH. So you sort of work out the math. So for a big, huge beech tree, it can
This
be
one right here, that's
quite expensive. Yeah, something like that probably is, you know, $500 or something of that nature. For all the public trees in Newport we're looking at a budget of about $17,000, which I'm very fortunate to have the Newport Tree Conservancy, the Preservation Society, and Salve Regina are looking at a budget of $150,000. But I'm just looking at, or recommending, we think of a few prominent trees, certainly beautiful one at the library. As you go into the fairgrounds, Glen Park, there's a line of them there. You know, we have a solution that works. 2 years ago, we thought we just would never see a beech tree again. They would be just like the chestnuts, where we'd be gone. So,
Excuse me, would you be working with local homeowners at all, providing them information? Because
Yes.
if they take care of theirs, it helps you.
right. Oh, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I've got a beautiful one that I planted 40
Oh,
years
great.
ago in front of my house.
Yeah,
It's big.
that,
So I'd be wanting to do that.
that's wonderful. So we're going to be sponsoring a program at Rosecliff in early May. And one of the purposes of that is to educate property owners.
Where would I find out about that?
We're going to do our best to get it out on social media. The dates haven't been finalized. I should mention that Aquidneck Land Trust, we have a very prominent across from 70 Fields woods there. And there's been very little research on saving woodland beech trees. And Bartlett is going to be doing a trial with the Aquidneck Land Trust to try some methodology. Anyone who's sort of walked through Weedema Woods, it's like, you know, winter and summer there. It's incredibly depressing. So Portsmouth is sort of leading the charge as far as some research to see if we can save some of our woodland beech trees.
Mr. Gleason?
Quest.
First off, thanks for your
Chris White to be
committee
next.
and all that you do. It's, you know, kind of unsung heroes trying to save some of these trees here. Is there a problem with beech trees as well in this day and age?
Beech
Any
tree?
kind of blight on bleach?
Yeah, I mean,
I've heard
beech
something
leaf
that-
disease is certainly.
I'm sorry, not beech trees, birch trees is what I meant to say.
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Sorry, we're talking about. beech already. I did hear you.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, were you sleeping the last 10 minutes?
Excuse me.
So we have, so the bronze birch borer is the pest that wipes out many of our birch trees, certainly our native birch trees as well as our European birch trees. We generally plant river birch as an
Right.
alternative, but there is an effective treatment for bronze birch borer. It just needs to sort of be done for a long time and it's a fairly, homeowners shouldn't attempt that one. It's a fairly, so they can be treated, but it's an expense. Fortunately, birch trees aren't what you think about when you think of Aquidneck Island, but beech trees are.
Yeah.
So we'd like to keep just a little bit of that character.
So the English birch is something that you often give out here, you have in the past, and those aren't affected?
We've so one of the things that the commission is historically done is try to really stick to native trees. Some of those native trees were somewhat disease susceptible, such as, for example, common dogwood. Generally, we've stuck to river birch, and because that isn't susceptible to bronze birch borer.
Okay.
So generally, that's the birch we've been given. This year, if people are interested, we're going to be giving 3 different types of evergreen trees because lots of people have needs for screening between their properties. So hopefully that'll be something that'll be worth people coming out for.
My last comment is, if you care to stick around, there's a new business here for the, what do we call it? The draft regional hazard mitigation plan. I'm sure you're familiar with that from Newport.
Sure.
But would you agree that that we could use more money for tree trimmers in general on this island for something like carpenter ant damage?
Yeah, and we're actually in Newport participating in a program by the Green Infrastructure Center. And there's no doubt that tree canopy has an incredible impact on our community, primarily in the form of runoff, of absorbing more water, slowing runoff, and really saving us a lot of money when it comes to stormwater. A little bit of a shocking number that I just learned. As comparison, Central Falls has 18% tree canopy cover. I was shocked to learn that Newport only has 19%. So
Wow.
I don't think anyone would have guessed. But certainly I think all of Aquidneck Island, we've got a lot of land in Portsmouth that was converted from fields and never traditionally had. And a lot of those trees that are in sort of these hedgerows are completely grown over with invasive bittersweet and such. So I don't think our canopy covers much better. And certainly the state of Rhode Island is its climate change policy. One of its main objectives is to increase canopy cover in the state. That's been threatened a little bit by solar and other issues.
Sure.
But yeah, it should definitely be part of our community's strategy to deal with stormwater and pollution and increase or decrease runoff. Trees are part of that solution.
Can work on that for you.
Yep.
For
Mrs.
us.
Blank?
Thank you.
Mrs.
Thank
Blank?
you.
Thanks.
No, I have a question.
Hi, sorry.
You had used the unit for the calculation, DBH. Can you tell me what that stands for?
So that's diameter at breast height.
Okay.
So yeah, it's really just,
That's self-explanatory.
yeah.
And then do we have any historical landmark trees? I know in Newport, that's a big draw. Is that something that we do here or have like the oldest tree recognized in town?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else from the commission knows. I mean, certainly, one of the points of discussion is always, when there's a very notable tree that, we see slated or for coming down. To my knowledge, we do not have sort of a champion list of trees in Portsmouth. It would be a great thing to work on, or trees designated as, historic particularly, but certainly a lot of properties, part of what makes them iconic is you certainly think of the Glen House, the trees there, and unfortunately we've lost a lot of those beech trees. But so yeah, it's not something we have, but it would be a wonderful thing to have.
Could you
such.
look into kind of maybe on the public land, some of the older ones? And I know
Sure.
down in Newport, I had done a tour and Benjamin Franklin had planted one,
Oh,
or if there was any interesting information along those lines.
Sure. Sure.
To then help preserve some of that history
Absolutely.
and trees.
Absolutely. And we do have, think of the trees along Linden Lane that we've been working to manage, get as much time of and begin to replant. I think that's probably the most iconic tree-lined boulevard we have. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Wheeler? Thank you, Mr. Wheeler.
Thanks.
I have a motion to receive and place on file.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, we have new business number 2, which is some clarifications of different pension-related questions. Ms. McDowell and Mr. Gleason. You had a lot of questions. I've asked the staff to research them all, put the answers down. So if we want to review them one by one, we can do that. I'll start with question number 1 is the proposed $300,000 as an added provisional budget and recommended by the Pension Review Committee, a new tax money not coming from existing funding, correct? There is no provisional budget yet. There is a town administrator proposed budget that's submitted to the council by on Friday. The council will approve the provisional budget after that in the meeting. The proposed budget does include the additional $300K for the pension fund for FY '26. This was factored in a draft budget due to the Pension Investment Advisory Committee's vote to recommend additional funding for the pension for the pension fund. The discussion was back in the fall to add $1 million in level fund or try and level fund the ARC payment. I don't think it'll ever be level funded, but the deltas will be less over the years. So our discussion last meeting, which was brought up, and the vote was by the Pension Investment Advisory Committee to go with 300 this year, 300 next year, and 400 the following year, which gets to that overall $1 million adder rather than adding it all at once. It's split out over 3 years. Is everybody okay with that item?
I think for me, it probably would be best to just read it through and then we can comment. But maybe other people have something different.
You're gonna make me read all of this, huh? All right.
And Ms. McDowell, don't forget to speak into them.
Sorry.
The minutes of the Pension Advisory Committee will not be approved until April 22nd. The proposed budget will be turned over at the end of the month. The Advisory Committee discussed the actuary's suggestion of shifting the actuary determined contribution, ADC, or the ARC payment, as they're both interchanged, from a percentage of pay to a level dollar. The shift in the next fiscal year would have increased the ARC payment from a percent of level pay to level dollar by almost $1 million in next fiscal year, which of course is funded through the general fund. The benefit of that approach would be that the year-to-year changes going forward would be fairly flat. The committee voted unanimously to recommend adding additional amounts to the pension investment over the next 3 fiscal years. This will result in a contribution to the pension fund by $1 million on top of what would be the already existing ARC payment for FY '28. Should the council have voted on this item, or is it just a placeholder for future consideration? The council will vote on the provisional budget in April. The amount was considered in our budget working papers as a placeholder to ensure the payment could be factored into the balanced budget in the case the council decides to move forward on the concept. Is the $300,000 added to the budget for the pension taken from surplus or added to the tax rolls? Citizens are under the impression that this is part of the tax roll and wondering why. The town's ARC payment is an additional $300K if approved by the council, will come from the general fund. Property taxes make up about 85% of the general fund. Residential property tax being about 76%, 7% being, and I'm rounding, I'm sorry, commercial property tax, and about 2% being tangible tax. The council did vote to apply 40% of any future surpluses to the pension investment fund and 10% to any future surpluses to the OPEB. When $300,000 is put into the budget for the pension fund, should the council formally vote on it, or is it a placeholder for later consideration? Same question. We'll do it again in April. And why was a recommendation from the Pension Review Committee never formally brought to the council for consideration? Is because it's part of the budget. Shall we stop there with question 1? Or you want to go through questions 2, 3, 4? 5, 6.
Preferences. I mean, I can comment on these or
Sure.
or not.
Let's get one behind us.
One behind.
Go ahead.
Okay, so, when a recommendation comes, when a recommendation comes from the pension committee, why isn't it brought here for discussion and approval, or maybe other things might be considered?
It can be. This particular item was discussed in the fall by the Pension Investment Committee, was formally adopted by them at their last meeting, but was already considered into the budget. So our discussion in terms of the $300,000 or $1 million, whichever way the council wants to go, is part of the budget discussion.
Okay, so the 300,000 that the pension committee is recommending to put in on a 334 to make up for that million, that is coming out of the general fund, which is new tax dollars from what you just read here. Why wouldn't we use our surplus to deal with that? I think it's an unfair thing for our taxpayers to not use our surplus and instead take it from the general fund where it's added to the, as a new tax dollar.
Because you can't count on that $300,000 being in surplus every year. This is money that's in the budget, baked into the budget, and it's there year after year after year. And as was stated 2 weeks ago, the value of the money being in there and flattening this out would help shorten the curve and hopefully get us to fully funded earlier than later.
My question, I guess, would be, we had a surplus of $1.2 million. We paid off a warrant, 1213 warrant, in the amount of 386 or thereabouts. So we have a remaining sum from surplus. We have an underfunded, somewhat severe underfunded pension fund. And why wouldn't we have brought the recommendation of the 300 to the council and dealt with that through our surplus? I'm really having a hard time understanding why we didn't do that. It is not fair for a taxpayer to take on the burden of a mistake that we as
What particular mistake did we make?
by underfunding, the underfunding of our
It's-
pension over
We've
the.
never underfunded our pension. It hasn't reached the level of 100% funded. Unfortunately for us as a council and also as citizens of Portsmouth, we are beholden to decisions made by previous councils and administrations, and we are forced to make that up. If the motion that was passed 2 weeks ago does precisely what you're suggesting, excuse me, but putting the 3, 3, and 4 adds to the ARC payment, helps level it out. So rather than a swing of an ARC payment being $4.5 million one year and $5.5 million the next, it would be closer to that 5.2 and stay in that general area so that the tax increases in the future would be somewhat mitigated.
Can I take a stab at this? It sounds like you don't have a problem with putting money into the fund because it's lacking, it needs more money. But you're suggesting that a quicker way would be to just take it out of the surplus. And get the $1 million out all the way. So is that the way, the question
Exactly.
you're asking?
So you're not asking to take it, all right, so let's, I'm gonna skip around for a quick
Okay.
second. Let's go down to the question number 2. There is some confusion as to when using terms fund balance and general fund. Please explain the differences. And I'm not going to read it all, but the differences are the general fund is essentially your checking account where you pay your day-to-day bills. The fund balance is our savings account where we keep 16% as suggested by the government GFOA and is our policy of 8 to 16%. We keep that because our rainy day fund should be about 2 months of our running budget, which is about, if you divide $75 million, which we're in that neighborhood, it comes out to be right around $12 million. If we were to take $1 million out of that, we could potentially be jeopardizing other areas of our finances, such as our bond rating.
So $800,000, let's say that the remainder of surplus, the 1.2, $800,000, if you applied that to the pension and used that fund money, what, we have a very good, we're right up there with our figures there. So what kind of difference would that make in terms of, it would be insignificant.
It would drop us from the roughly 16% we're at now down to 15% or 14.5. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. Depending
But
on how much we take out.
that's still an excellent rating for bond rating, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. That's still a very good rating. We're not jeopardizing our bond rating. I can't see it if we did
Advice
that.
from bond counsel says we are.
What's that?
Advice from our bond counsel says that we would be if we went below the 16%. Or there is a program that is designed, that was set forth 7 years ago in order to fund this program and the pension fully by 2040. Adding the surplus dollars will help us get there faster. But I don't want to see us jeopardize our bond rating and cause, if we do have to go out to bond for a new building, roofs, that instead of paying, say, 4%, we're paying 6 or 7. Then we're just losing the money right out the front door. But that's a council decision.
Before you start, could I just make one statement?
I won't start until I'm recognized by the president.
Okay. The reason I'm bringing this up is I remember, I don't know whether Mr. Rayner will remember, but in November, I met with Mr. Rayner and very excited that we had a 1.2 million surplus, and that was great. And I said to him, you know, it would be great if we could use that money to help continue to fund our pension, and maybe half of that for that, and then the other half possibly for capital improvements that we've been a little remiss in. And I believe his answer was, well, that's up to the council. They can do what they want with that. Is that, I mean, that's right, correct?
Absolutely. is
Okay.
correct.
All right.
Any further questions or clarifications from the council? Mr. Kessin, how are you? Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Could you help the elderly right now sitting in the back of the room, Paul Kessin, 3241 East Main Road? Could you help the elderly in the back of the room that hasn't been paying attention to this since we did the pension change in 2012? What is the current ARC payment?
Kayla, do you have the exact number off the top of your head? I want to say it's around 5.
5 million.
And they're looking for an increase of what this year in the ARC payment?
The discussion is,
What do you have budgeted for the ARC payment this year, give or take, versus
don't
last
have
year?
probably about 5 million.
Okay. And
But
that's
the
higher than
start of
last year?
this- it is higher than last year. However, actually, no, it's lower than last year. What I think was driving this and started the discussion many, many months ago was there was, and I believe this started with either a presentation or a discussion at the Pension Advisory Committee level, a discussion to try to level out the pension ARC payments over the years. So there, you would have a more level funding. So there would be a big increase here now, and which would mitigate the perturbations between the year-to-year ARC payments until we get to the fully funded status. So that is going from percent of pay to level funding. The actuary calculated that. To go from level percent of pay, which is where we're at right now, to level funding, that would increase above what we've budgeted right now, that would increase the ARC payment this next fiscal year by $1 million.
Now, help me out, because I was a member of the 2012 Pension Commission when we went through this. That ARC payment is normalized over is it 5 years? When they come up with the ARC payment, it's not because of an instantaneous loss of revenue from the interest made on the account. Because we could be down 15 this year and looking at a $7 million payment just because the market doesn't make the money.
Correct. And there's a term for that. And yes, absolutely.
Understand, but what I'm trying to say is, right now, there is a 5-year average. So the million really looks like 4 until they have a smoothing that basically says, because the either fund made 17% last year and minus 13 this year, there's a smoothing in this ARC payment in the requirement. And if that was happening during the last year's budget, then I guess from where I'm sitting today, we were delinquent in declaring a surplus of 1.5 million for almost the second year in a row. And if I believe the last meeting I was at the, I think it was the middle school, we were on target to be at the same spot this year, which means we're tracking almost about $1 million surplus in this current year, which is now 3 years in a row. Why wouldn't we just get this ARC payment behind us and force it into the budget this year and still stay within 2%, but at least make the commitment to the people who made the commitment to the town? When I was on the Pension Commission in 2012, we tried to freeze this ARC payment at $2.5 million. That was the goal of the commission in 2012, when we froze the pensions of the existing employees, put them on a 4%, and I believe it was an 8%. I think it was an 8% that we matched into their 401ks. But initially, we were trying to freeze this payment that we knew was going to overrun the town in 2012. And we were trying to freeze the number at $2.5 million. And today you're telling me it's 5, and next year it could be 6. I'm just confused why we're
Next year.
maybe adding $3,500 against $1 million payment that should just be paid right up front out of the current budget. Or before we closed the budget last year, took $800,000, didn't declare a victory on 1.5 million, and paid the ARC payment before we declared a fund balance at the end of the year. Because last year we hit the maximum of 16%, I think is the number, because Mr. President just said it. We hit the max percentage we could be at 16%. After this year, it's like you can't come up with a budget surplus. The ordinance says we hit 16%. What does it say we do with the rest? Do we return that in the following year as a rate reduction to the taxpayer? there's some thought that I think from where I'm sitting and what the plan was in 2012, and don't get me wrong, this was 12 years ago. We made a commitment to the existing employees to pay their pensions through death rather than maybe pay it with a surplus next year and counting on some people to die to pay the other half. To me, this is a mistake that needs to be corrected and corrected today. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rayner.
Mr. President, the ARC payment is determined by the actuaries. The ARC payment has always been our policy to pay 100% of the ARC payment. By paying 100% of the ARC payment, we are in line with what the policy was set as years ago. This pension will be fully funded in 2040, in the fiscal year 2041. By paying that ARC payment, if you go back to all the charts always showed an increase in the ARC payment until it's fully funded and it drops off. So that is exactly what the plan is doing. If you do nothing else, the fund will be fully funded in accordance with the plan laid out years ago. What has been suggested is that we could either make those payments. So if you increase it by $1 million now, it's not going to keep going up year by year by year, and you get a fairly, your increases will be absolutely minimal between now and when it's fully funded. Or the other suggestion was you can build up to the $1 million, the 334, and then put a portion of any future surpluses into the pension. So it's not like we have that much control. We're told this is according to the plan that was laid out by the pension board, which is the council. This is what you need to continue funding your pension plan. We get the Gatsby report every single year. The Gatsby report outlines what the population is by department, what that impact is on the pension liability, and determines what the ARC payment is, and that's what we pay. I understand the logic of taking money and putting more money into it, but that's not what the council has decided to do.
I have one more question. When we were on the council, when I was on the council from 12 to 14, we distributed the recommendation from Nyhart, I believe it was at the time. That got distributed to every council member. So they knew in, I'm not going to say July, but maybe September, what the impact was going to be on the budget. Did that get distributed to this current council that's making these
ARC
decisions?
gets posted every year and it gets put into the pension, into the budget.
Did that get distributed to the current members of the council?
What is your definition of distribute, Mr. Kessin? It gets posted online and it's referred to specifically in every single budget.
The ARC payment.
The
comes
ARC
out-
payment paperwork that came in from
the ARC payment-
Nyhart at
The
the
ARC
time.
payment information from GovInvest, who are currently using now.
That's GovInvestment is what we're using now. Thank you for helping.
Currently.
I didn't know they existed.
Comes out in December each year.
So that
And
needs
it's
to
put
move
into the
to,
budget.
that needs to move to December so we can have either that or July at the close of the year so we can fix this shortfall or increase adjustment in the pension ARC payment, rather than trying to do it 1 week, 2 weeks before we publish a new budget.
We're not trying, we're putting it into the new budget, staging it over the course of the next 3 years. We
Okay.
could, if
Thank-
this council wanted to.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just thought we were trying to solve it tonight.
If this council, no, this is just further clarification because we had a pension discussion last week of doing precisely what we were doing with, and you were here for that discussion too, with the 1213 warrant. Your motion was to put $50,000 a year in budgeted and pay the 1213 warrant over the course of roughly 20 plus years or 25
Well,
years.
My discussion in 2017, when I was on the council, was in 2012, we found $500,000 to start paving roads. we went to borrow $500,000 to finish paving the roads. When I got back in 17, it was 1.5 million, when it should have only been $500,000. That was my discussion, Mr. President. And
No, the discussion to close that gap of the.
oh, to close that
1.7.
gap after
Yes.
17 was to spend the surplus against it, correct?
So what?
But it should have never went above $500,000 because that's all we authorized. I don't know how it got to 1.5 million.
Where it's behind us. So the discussion last week was in order to help close the gap. And again, to make it simple terms, everybody has a mortgage. We're making an extra principal payment if it's available with the surplus. That's it. The 3, 3, and 4, if this council wanted to, could be put into this budget all at once, $1 million, but the tax increase would be higher than was discussed earlier. That's all. The discussion at the pension committee meeting, the pension advisory committee meeting, was either do it $1 million, 3, 3, and 4, or there was another suggestion of 2, 2, and 2. 2, 2. That was 5, right? I thought that it would be comfortable enough to get it 3, 3, and 4, so we get the money in faster rather than the 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and would be less of a burden this year if we did the $1 million right off the bat. So does that cover 1 and 2 comfortably? Mr. Grebe. I really don't want to spend all night on this because we really have a long agenda, but let's keep going.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just think that there's some misinformation here. The GFOA,
Mr. Grebe,
I'm sorry, Tom Grebe, 110 Thayer Drive. The GFOA recommends 15% as the number for the fund balance.
The GFOA recommends a 2-month rainy day supply. 2 months, if you divide it by 12 and you get a percentage, it's 16.7.
I will tonight send you.
I will send it to you right now.
Recommendation.
2 months rainy day
It's
supply.
roughly the same thing. 15%, 16%, roughly the same thing. My point is that that's the maximum that is being recommended. The minimum GFOA recommends, I believe, was an 8%. We are recommending 8, and so our ordinance says we should be between 8 and 16. At 12 million and a $74 million budget, we are at 16.2%.
Mhm.
We are not going to get close to the lower limit of 8% by taking $1 million out of the fund balance, which does not affect the taxes. That's the big point. If you take it out of the fund balance, it is not added to the taxes, and the tax levy would stay the same, but the $1 million would go in. Now, let me further say that if you put the $1 million from the fund balance where it is invested at basically cash equivalents into the fund, it will be invested in stocks with a long-term look and will, at least historically, maybe get twice as much interest over the time frame as it would otherwise. So it's a much better deal for the taxpayer. Now, you're going to tell me that yes, and I agree, it might affect the bond rating.
No, I'm going to tell you that your suggestion is that we put in $1 million one time. If we put in 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, and 4, and it's baked into the ARC payment and moves it from 5 million to 6 million, it's baked into the budget. And we're putting in $1 million extra starting in 2028, 29, 30, 31. Your suggestion is we take $1 million and throw it in now.
That's correct.
I'm perfectly fine with that. If you want to go back,
honestly, you could do all three. half of the surplus is coming up, $1 million now. And if you think the taxpayer should pay part of this right now, put in the 3 again.
The motion and the discussion from the Pension Advisory Committee was to do 3, 3, and 4 into the ARC payment, level it off instead of doing a percent of pay, and get there, the extra $1 million, and bake it into the budget. You're coming back with a specific plan that A, might not be there every year. Two of the reasons we have a significant surplus is we don't have enough police officers, so we're not paying them, and we're having a good experience with investments right now. If that's not there in 2 years or next year, we don't have that money to put in. If we put it into the budget, and I'm fine, I'll go with I'll take the $300,000 out and we won't use it at all. But I want you to stand there and say, and you admitted it or started to admit the fact that if we do lose our AAA bond rating, which is a possibility, it will cost us more money to go out to bond for major projects if we have them in town, which then would negate those savings over the course of time. Because we know the $21 million bond for the schools is really 26 or 7.
But the $1 million would take us from a 16.2% of the budget down to 14.8, according to my calculations, which is, as far as I'm concerned, 15%. I don't see that as being the impact, especially because I don't think we're going to bond anything in the near future. I understand that we've got the roof problem.
We have roof problems.
But hopefully there's enough in the capital funds and so forth that we can get through that without bonding it. But even if we did, it's a relatively small bond. I just don't see it being affected by it.
Well,
anyway, I wanted to make sure that everybody on the council understood the 16% is a maximum. That's our ordinance. By law, you're supposed to do something else when the fund balance gets over 16%. Now, you may want to change that, but it isn't changed. Right now, you're at 16%, and anything above that. All I'm saying is take $1 million out to get it down to 15%, which is still well over the 8% minimum. And you don't then put the 300, 300, and 400 on the taxpayer. They've already paid it, and you're going to earn more money on it that way. So I think it's a good thing to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Well, I think that covers number 3 in maintaining a 16% fund balance. Yes? I guess I should read it anyways. So question number 3 on the agenda was, question number 3 under new business number 2 is maintaining a maximum of 16% of the general fund balance, a Rhode Island state law. What are the implications, if any, based on the currently where we stand? It's not a general law. It is a recommendation of GFOA of having a 2-month surplus, a rainy day fund. And currently, if you do 2 months, it's 16.7%. We're at 16% as of today. We may be over that at the end of the year. Once we pass a budget, it will be below that. So we are there. If we need $1 million at this point in time, it's going to probably go to keep our kids warm, safe, and dry in the roofs at the high school. So we hopefully don't have to go to bond. Subsection A of the question is there was a $1.2 million surplus. As you mentioned, Councilor McDowell, 386 went to finally close out that 1213 warrant. Starting this year, that same process will happen with the pension fund, where 40% will go to the pension, 10% of any surplus will go to the OPEB. How many retirees are covered by the pension fund? Currently, we have 106 in the school, 68 in the fire, 64 in the police, 21 public work, 31 public works, 27 town for a total of 296. That number can fluctuate based on spouses and survivor benefits, and if anybody happens to get divorced and remarried. Question 5 is also covered in question 4, correct? Good with that, everyone? Plan was originally to be fully funded in 2040. It is still to be funded in 2040. There's just differences in the numbers. 2040 is the year, 2041 is the fiscal year. So that explains those differences. Portsmouth's pension fund is currently funded at roughly 62%. It was 62% as the end of last year. It went up. It's gone down a little bit with the stock market performance over the past couple of weeks. Current funding status is 61.3. Other towns in Rhode Island for closed pension programs as of April of last year is the best numbers I could find, range from 10% to 92.5. And well, we'll have a cake. And those funds range, and the percentages for those funds range from anywhere from 7.9% assumed rate of return to 6.75. I don't think there's anything lower than ours. From what I did save that someplace. But do you need anything further than that? I can get specific. I know Middletown is the highest at 92.5, but they have a 7.5% assumed rate of return. And yes, we did use the surplus to pay off the 1213 warrant, and that did require a council vote. It was done in 2 times. One in 17, where the council voted to do 50% in the budget each year, and then in 20 with a new council, I made the motion to use the surpluses, and we used in fiscal year 20, we used through 349, 21, we used 160. We did 314 in 22, 499 in 23, and 368 to close it out. So we closed it out in 7 years rather than roughly 25. Does that cover everything? Questions? Mr. Gleason?
Yeah, it covered it for me. I just want to thank the finance department and Mr. Rayner for compiling those questions, and would like to make a motion to receive it and place it on file.
Second.
Any further discussions or questions on? And I would also ask the clerk if you could post the answers on the website too, in minutes.
You would include that in part of my motion, please.
All those in favor? Whoop. Ms. McDowell?
Yep. So the motion is to put this on file.
And post these with the agenda item and in the minutes.
Okay, and post those.
The
So,
answers, sorry.
so does that mean that we cannot look at what we're doing and change that?
We can, if you want to bring it up on the next agenda and specifically say, I want to,
Okay.
because I don't
A
think it was listed
specific
as.
plan.
Not listed
Okay.
as discussion and action. This was just.
Yeah.
No, right.
So you could just put it on
right.
the next
Okay.
agenda if you wanted to.
Just,
change
Say primer
Thank you.
for our next
thank you.
budget.
Just a couple things before we move on. One is, I truly believe that the recommendations from the pension fund committee should have come to us for discussion. And I also believe that placing $300,000 in our budget for our pension fund should have come to our town council for discussion and approval. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say it's going to be in the budget. But the pension fund is in our budget in various ways, and it's difficult for me to tease it out. And then using the general fund that is added to the tax roll, I believe is unfair to the taxpayers when we don't need to. Just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, we're having a discussion. Mr. Forgione from the Portsmouth Economic Development Committee. A recommendation to break down the residential tax rate into 2 tiers, a non-owner occupied and an owner occupied. Mr. Forgione, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Joe Forgione from 28 Aquidneck Ave. I'll give you some of the time back. The letter should be self-explanatory, but let me spend 2 or 3 minutes giving you some context of how we got here. And then I'll answer any of your questions or take the questions that I can't answer. Just refreshing everybody's memory. I know you guys know this. Portsmouth Economic Development Committee is a group of people who are focused on primarily on retaining and attracting new businesses to Portsmouth, but we do get involved in a lot of activity around economic analysis because we have people that have backgrounds in economics and finance and business and so on and so forth. Last year, some of you were on the council. We were asked specifically by the town council, I can't remember who it was, to actually look at tiered tax rates and specifically initially, I think Mr. Gleason, it was from you asking to look at commercial rates. So that's how we got started. And we looked at commercial rates and we determined very quickly, again, from a PEDC perspective, and I think we would all agree, having businesses in Portsmouth to a certain extent is a good thing. We don't want to be like Middletown, but having businesses does help our tax base. And we felt that, given the unique circumstances we have here, that if we had a commercial rate, it would be counterproductive and we would probably drive more businesses away and it would, cause more problems. Now, just in context, Middletown and Newport have commercial rates. Tiverton and Bristol do not. So it's kind of give you the perspective. And
Specifically, they have different commercial rates.
different, yeah, they have a premium for commercial rate. And, that would make sense because Middletown and Newport are destination sites. We can't compete with them. And so I think keeping commercial rate flat is, keeping a commercial rate equal to the residential rate makes sense for us. Then we started looking at tiered rates, and a lot of communities in Rhode Island, including Newport and Middletown, have implemented owner occupied or non-permanent resident tier as premium. Newport did it. Newport has an 18% premium. Middletown did it. They have a 30% premium. We haven't made a final recommendation. As a next step, it would be working with Rich and his group to drill down to the tax base to determine how we would do it. But we did believe that it would make sense for us to have 2 tiers and have a premium tier for those people that are not here full-time year-round. And as I was educated, thanks by Rich, this doesn't increase the tax base. It's a zero-sum game, the way we do budgets. And all it will do is it'll allow us, if we charge a little bit more for non-residents, it will allow us to give a little bit less to people who are here full-time year-round. Kind of back of the envelope, which I didn't have in the letter, let's just assume that 10% of the properties are non-permanent residents, right? 90% are people that live here full-time. And let's just assume that the average assessed value of both is equal. I know that's not true, but let's say it's $500,000. If we added a premium of 20% to people that are not here full-time, that would allow us, doing the math, to give about 2.2% reduction to everybody else. And on a $500,000 house assessed value at 1318, that's $6,600 a year in tax. That 2.2% would be about $150. So we would charge people who are not here full-time a little bit more, the 20% more. We would spread that over everybody else. And that would be a pretty meaningful amount, I believe, to offer to the full-time residents. Now, where you get into a little bit of distinction is, what do you do about full-time, long-term rentals? And we made the decision, as Newport did, to include long-term lease rentals in the category of full-time permanent residents. In other words, owner occupied, because we felt that, we want to attract people, families into the community, and they're part of the community full-time, and that if we charged the premium to the owner of that property, they would pass it on to the renters, and we didn't think that was a good thing. And in fact, Newport did that, Middletown didn't, and Middletown got a lot of backlash as a result of not including rental property in the tiers. Now, finally, one item is due to the idiosyncrasies of state law, in order to do what I just described, it requires legislative approval by both the House and the Senate, filing legislation to basically be able to do the distinction between the tiers, okay? Newport did that a couple of years ago, and it was unanimous. Both they had a House, it's referenced in the letter. They had a House bill and a Senate bill. So we believe that if you decide to go forward and do this, that we would get our legislators to submit that. Unfortunately, when we first did this letter, we thought maybe we would get it into legislative session this year. Unfortunately, and we understand why it was delayed. We're not going to be able to get it in because they're now beyond I think the filing deadline was February 15th. And so we're really talking about if we do this, it will be in the fiscal year 27 budget, right? Correct. So, yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean, and I'll leave it up to the wisdom of you guys to decide. It doesn't necessarily mean we couldn't start doing the work and maybe even vote that we're going to, do that and sync it up next year, but that's up to you. So that's kind of the summary. It's basically, 2 tiers. And the next step would be to drill down with the tax assessor, Matt, and, really do the distinction between how much property is there. It's easy to verify in our own databases, but you also have voter rolls, which is the distinction. And the Newport form is a very simple form that goes out to everybody every year, and they have to certify that they're owner occupied and notarized, and there's penalties if you falsify it. In order to get the lower tier, you have to designate that you either renting it long-term and attach the lease, or certify that you're owner occupied. If not, everybody that doesn't do that gets taxed at the higher rate. That's how it works. So any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Hang on a sec. Hold on.
Yeah,
Hold on.
okay.
Hold on. Okay. I have one quick question or
Yeah.
one comment.
Yeah.
I agree we need legislative, enabling legislation.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go for enabling legislation until we have a plan that says this is what we're looking for.
Right.
So I think, the old cart and horse thing, let's do the work with Matt and his team.
Yeah.
And Leah and develop a plan, whether it's similar to Middletown, Newport, or we come up with something completely different.
Yeah.
And then we go to our legislators and say, this is what we want to do. We need enabling legislation to make that happen.
Yep. Yep.
Right? Mr. Reese.
Okay, Joe, how you doing? All right, in your backup that I got, it said non-owner occupied residential is a higher rate. And, but it sounds like what you're gonna do is not that exact thing. It's different. Because if that was the case, that would mean long-term rentals, they're not owner occupied. They're occupied by lower income, the elderly and young families starting out and trying to save for a home. It probably should say non-resident occupied. I mean, I think that's what you meant.
Correct. There's a little bit of labeling here.
Right.
You're absolutely correct. It includes long-term rentals,
Okay,
and
because
so
I would think it's like what Middletown has. I think it could be stated non-resident occupied short-term residential property. That has a higher rate. That's one thing they do.
yes,
And then resident occupied long-term residential, including non-rented additional residences of Portsmouth residents.
absolutely.
Some people in Portsmouth have 2 houses and they on the beach or something like that. And that shouldn't be taxed at a higher rate just because they would if it was rented, but not if it's just used for them.
Yeah, again, this is where the distinction of how you word the resolution that wasn't necessarily what we were involved in. That's sort of a next step.
Joe, we will talk.
It will have to be very precise, and the language will have to be carefully written. Absolutely.
I have some ideas.
Yeah.
Thanks. Joe.
Okay, good.
And all the definitions in the ordinance and all that fun stuff. has to be laid
Absolutely.
out.
Yeah.
Mr. Payaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Borgione, I'm thankful that you brought this in front of us. This is actually something I spoke with the tax assessor and the town administrator just a couple months ago. I love what other towns have done, and I think that it's time for us to do it here. My biggest concern comes with the fact that there is this massive disparity between owner occupied, it's been a very long day, and our commercial tax rate. And I think you kind of hit on it, that the savings may not be sizable like it has been in some other municipalities. I think that's the one thing that we have to look at is the registration method, and I completely get that Newport has made it pretty simple with the form and submission.
Right.
My only concern is that if people don't submit, that we're not gonna get the adherence that we need from owners in order to be able to get that
Yeah.
difference between owner and non-owner occupied.
Yeah.
Has any other municipality done anything in order to make that easier and remove the burden from
Yeah.
the owner to so that the town is better able to come up with a number early on in the budget
I
process?
don't have an answer to that question, but that's a good
And I
question.
appreciate the fact that you said that.
Yeah, no, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to be here is to, get questions so we could do follow-up research. But that is something where we could have maybe a conversation with the assessors in Newport and find out what the issues that they're encountering, and how they overcome that, because even though it doesn't seem to be too burdensome, the form from Newport that I have, you have to sign it and certify and put your driver's license number to verify that you're a
You have
resident.
to mail it, you have to.
And if you rent it, you have to attach a lease. So it's, a little bit of work. And I could see a lot of people in town who live there permanently overlooking that, maybe, which would be a problem. Right. So we'll take a look at that.
Thank you. And I'd be happy to be part of the discussion.
Okay.
Ms. Flake?
Thank you for coming forward and bringing this information. Greatly appreciate all you've put together. Am I correct in the assumption that this is mainly trying to focus on the Airbnb, the short-term rentals, and second homes?
Yes. That, again,
Like
those would be.
similar type situations like
Exactly,
that.
because if it's an Airbnb, typically, even though we all know many of them were started where people actually lived in the residence but most Airbnbs are not owner occupied. And we believe, as is the case in Newport, that should be in the higher tier because they have the ability to pass that on. I kind of liken it, it's not a good example, but I liken it as when you go to a hotel in Newport, you pay a visitor's tax. So you would, pay a little bit more for your Airbnb rate. That would be passed on as part of the, the owner's increase in taxes. So, but long-term, we could include non-owner occupied long-term rentals in the premium rate, but we believe that.
Absolutely don't want
Yeah,
to.
we believe that it's not the right thing to do, and, we consider them to be permanent residents of the community. And so therefore, that specifically is the item that requires the state legislation to include. When Middletown didn't get state legislation, they were prevented from doing that. So I don't know, again, you may know the idiosyncrasies of the law, but that was the one thing that if you want to include long-term rentals in owner occupied at a lower tax rate, you have to get legislative approval.
And thank you. I'd like to point out, I agree with, as a second home, that certainly makes sense. And I feel that even if it is a Portsmouth resident with a second home, because there could be Portsmouth resident with 10 homes, they shouldn't have the lower rate. I feel like even that should cover with the higher rate for the non-primary residents, in my opinion.
Personally, I would agree with that. Obviously that would be something as part of the overall discussion. I think, again, if you have a second home, it's for a different purpose than if you have one residence that's owner occupied full-time, should be at the lower tier. And
Because it wouldn't cover if I had a second home and it was full-time for my parents and they were living, and they were being, it
No,
was
you just-
rented out full-time. That's a different
No, if they're
situation.
rented out full
But
time.
if I had
that's what-
5 houses in Portsmouth,
Correct. If it's rented out full time
can
to a family
afford the
member, you have
taxes.
a lease, or you could have a lease, and therefore you could be in lower.
would you
could
like
be-
to turn your microphone on?
All right.
So, okay.
Two questions. Well, what does Newport define as long-term? Is it 12 months or is it 9?
It actually, the form says 7 months, which I believe is it's the IRS designation. If any of you have homes in other states, that's what determines, how many months you can go down in Florida and get no income tax rate. So
I think
state-
Rhode Island's 181 days. which
It
doesn't make any
says
sense.
7 months. I don't know exactly how they determine that, but again, that's something that we'd have to check with legal, whether we want to make it, 9, 7, 12, whatever.
So in Ms. Blank's description, if I have a house here that I live in full-time, but I have a summer home on Hog, do I pay the higher rate for the house on Hog? I don't have a house on Hog, just a hypothetical.
Oh, do you pay the?
Yes, the non-primary residence was
Okay.
what,
It is-
what,
okay.
what was I describing?
Yeah.
It's been a long night. That's what I was
the-
describing.
The way the forms read, where they ask for driver's license, and I know that some validate the voter rolls, it would be wherever you have your primary residence, wherever whatever, your license says your primary residence, where you registered to vote would be your primary, and the other one would not be considered to be primary.
Okay.
So that's how it would work.
One more final question. Is there any way to roll people into this that we know are residents or am I hearing you correct that every single person, every single home resident, head of household would need to come to town hall and show you their certification? Or is there a way to, yes, I know that you are a full-time resident
Yeah.
there?
Again, the way it's done in Newport is it's a form, and it says you have to do it every year to certify. And
A
it's
a
specifically.
certified letter every
No,
year
it's-
from
it's-
every household.
That's what it says. Again, there may be.
Could we look into
Sure.
possible just brainstorm ideas
Yeah,
of
well,
how to make it easier
that's-
for?
Counselor Piero asked, and I think that's related to that, because I think we do want to simplify it for people. We don't want to penalize people just because they overlooked. Yeah, okay.
Councilman
Thank-
Miguel?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I just have one question. So the ball is in whose court at this point? Economic development to refine and to get more information, or is it?
What I would like to propose, and I will propose it and ask you if you agree, that it becomes a collaborative effort between the Economic Development Committee and town administration to work together. And, we can offload some of the work and crunch some numbers, and I can meet with Mr. Helfand and say, give us, this data, and we can do some of the work together. So if that would be, that's what we're here for. We're here to help.
So the answer to your question, the ball's in our court
Ball's in our court.
right now to make a decision as to how to move forward. So I will ask Mr. Heflin come up for a quick second to ask how he thinks it'd be easiest for him to proceed with this. I don't know how much you've already prepared on this. Loaded question, sorry. How would you like to proceed to utilize the efforts of the PEDC to hopefully help you close this gap in terms of allowing us to bring something forward for next fiscal year's budget?
Well,
2 years fiscal year budget, not next year.
yeah, not next, don't you?
FY 27, FY 27.
Right. We'll need time. And I think the important thing is to find out how many owner occupied properties we have. So we have to get ahead of that so you can make a decision on the economic impact it's going to have. I believe in our initial discussions, next year we have the full reval coming out. We don't want to do it then. Okay, so getting in ready for the next year, we'll send out some information forms if we can have people fill out the forms and come in. Hopefully by October of the following year, we'll have time and we'll be able to design a program that'll be accurate and reflect what the impact will be.
Okay, so
It's-
your suggestion is then that we get it in place for fiscal year 28, because we have a full reval that's coming up at the end of, well, it's in process now.
The 26 tax roll for the full reval, so this would be implemented for the 27 tax roll.
Which would be the fiscal year 28 budget, if I'm hearing you correctly. Yes, sorry, which will go into effect on July 1st, 2027.
Yep.
Okay, okay. I just want to make sure everybody's clear of what it is. So when we come out with the full revaluation, standard is 30% of the houses go down, 30% of the houses stay around the same, and 30% of the houses go up.
Correct.
Good amount. So to avoid that sticker shock and also change a program in how people are taxed, your suggestion is that we implement the tiered tax starting July 1, 2027.
Correct.
Is the council comfortable with that?
Yes, I think it makes sense.
Okay, so
Can I ask a clarifying question?
absolutely.
Do we currently have the short-term rental units?
We do not, in our system, we do not have it designated. Leah's got, I think we've got a list of,
I thought they had to
Car-
register them.
they do.
They're not in the tax system. They're
Not
they're
in
not-
fact, but,
they're in a
but
different
somewhere else we have
Oh,
short-term
absolutely. Yes.
registered,
Yes,
so we can help make it easier.
that's part of the data that will help make it easier, but it's
Okay.
still a lot of cross-referencing that needs to be done.
Yeah. And we'd like to make it easy for the taxpayers. At the same time, I'm giving away money. I need backup and justification that they meet the requirements.
Perfect. So I guess the motion would be to task the administration, and I'm not going to narrow down who it's going to be. That's your job. To develop a tiered tax system over the course of the next 18 months to be implemented in fiscal year 2028.
So moved.
Can
Does
we,
that work for you? That correct? Mr. Matt, yeah, okay.
I was just gonna say, can we add that the PEDC is involved in that?
You can, if you would like,
Maybe do.
if
Second with the motion, with the
well,
addition.
I have the motion. I will amend.
Thank you.
So amended.
and now we have a
As
second.
presented.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I know that's not exactly what you're looking for, but it gets us down the road, and I agree with Matt that when those revals come out, people get scared, so. All right. New business number 4. Mr. Gray, public hearing requests for Ragged Island for approval for noise to the sound limits set forth in codification of ordinances, chapter 257, noise for multiple events to allow live amplified music to take place throughout the summer on the lawn of Ragged Island at 54 Bristol Ferry Road. There's a list of events, starting with the music festival, June 7th and 8th, and then Wednesday nights thereafter on July 6th, Sunday, July 6th or 13th, August 10th, 13th, starting June 25th through August 27th. And we have a favorable opinion from the zoning board of approval that is attached as well. Mr. Gray, welcome, and happy birthday. You didn't tell me it was your birthday. Oh, yeah, so we need sorry, we have.
Need a motion to open the hearing. Public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Now you can go. Sorry.
Good evening, councilors, residents. My name is Matthew Gray. I'm the owner of 87 Colonel Christopher Green Road in Sandy Point, as well as the Ragged Island Brewing Company at 54 Bristol Ferry Road. We have successfully hosted events outdoors for the last 2 summers. We're looking to expand a little bit on that this year, just to cover some more of those beautiful days that are ahead. People seem to really enjoy coming out and gathering. It's a nice community gathering space that we've created out there. We are family friendly. We are open for operation between noon and 9 p.m. The music, as you'll see, will be ceasing at 8:30 p.m. as per our request. And so right now, I'm just looking to get approval for the sound variance that we are required to have.
Questions from the council? Reese?
I was actually going to make a motion.
Okay,
I have a question.
okay.
Do you have a, you have a question?
Why don't we do the question first? and then
Do
we'll
the
motion?
question first.
Okay,
Let's try that.
this way.
Is there a reason why you're choosing Sunday over Saturday? Just as a person who.
Saturdays are very, they're kind of busy days already. Sunday's a little bit of a slower day. And the reason we really went and asked for a Sunday, and it's going to be Sunday, July 13th and August 17th specifically. Those are the two dates, the not and or anymore. I had to start talking to bands and booking them. But the reason we moved to Sunday was we wanted to take one of our busiest nights, which was the Ravers night, which is the only night that seemed to be overwhelming as far as the number of people who were looking to attend, and moving it to a Sunday. So that way we would encourage carpooling. When we start a concert at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday night in the summertime, even though it's summertime, many people have jobs up until 5:30. And so therefore they drive directly to Ragged Island, causing a little bit more of a traffic congestion problem. So our assumption would be that on a Sunday afternoon, you'll get a lot more carpooling, reducing our traffic and parking challenges.
Thank you for the clarification.
No problem.
Now, Mr. Reese. Oh,
Okay.
wait.
All right, I would like to make a motion to approve the variance with the provision of a 75 maximum DBA limit as measured per ordinance 257.
Mr. Hamilton, do you want to close the public hearing and then
Oh.
do the?
Well, I believe Ms. Patton had a question first.
Oh.
I did,
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
So thank you for being here. I did go on your website and saw that you already have like 900 tickets sold out for one of your shows coming up, a celebrity chef, right?
Celebrity chef?
Is coming to, or do you have that coming or?
No.
So okay, so I thought I saw there was 900 tickets already sold for one of your events. And I'm just curious as far as security, are you looking to have more security this year or parking situations? Can you just go over
Sure.
that?
Sure, yeah, as we covered all that in the zoning, we met with the police and fire. We have certified event managers working for us. We hired JFA Security out of Middletown. We have police details and fire details on site. The expectation would be we would have somewhere between 800 to 1,000 people per day at this event. Last year, we had over 800. There was a celebrity chef involved in that, I guess. He considers himself a celebrity. Sorry, Kev. But yes, we were able to successfully manage that. As far as like turnout goes, like that's kind of on the lower side. Like if you want to think about like the Ravers night, we were probably about 1,400 people there. And that's because it's a non-ticketed event. With these concerts, the first two on June 7th and 8th, they are ticketed. So that's going to be all the business we do that day. The whole property will be shut down except for those who have tickets for that event. And I think we'll be able to manage that very easily.
Any questions from the audience? I apologize. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for straightening me out. Any questions from the audience? Any comments? Hearing none. Chief? Thank you.
Mr. President, members of the council, the police department just requests, because this spans over multiple dates, that they include a stipulation that we'd ask for, that if there's any issues that come up that's not satisfactorily addressed by the management, that the police department or the town has the right to bring it back in front of the council for you to hear any issues for the dates going forward.
Okay. Anyone else?
Your opinions on that, Mr. Gray? Are you good with that?
I'm absolutely fine with that. We do not expect any challenges. We really don't hope to have any. We haven't had any in the past, and our planning should be sufficient to make sure they're good events. As far as the Wednesday night concerts, parking has been a challenge in the past, only on one night, one time. Again, that was the Ravers band that they kind of people, I'm not expecting that many people to show up, and they kind of overwhelmed us. And they parked down on side roads, not necessarily in illegal spots, but then they did park in the senior center, which is now cordoned off. So you won't be able to do that. And then basically my neighborhood roads. But besides that day, we were able to come up with a better parking plan internally. We do hire a bunch of people to work just parking on the event nights just to help manage it. They're all with the yellow vest and the flags. We try to do it, as a professional manner as possible. But yes, that parking is hopefully not going to be a challenge. In addition, we've secured 200 more spaces on our property for parking. We have All Island Landscaping as a renter on our property at one point in time. We have divided that land and cut it down in half, and half of it will be used for parking now. So we do have a landscape tenant still, but it is about 50% reduced space.
Ms. McGowan?
Chief, could you address or tell us what you think about, give us your input on what you think about placing a limit on the decibel? Would it make your job easier? And how do you feel about that?
It would. So over the past year, we've done that twice now in certain incidents where we had it down at Safe Harbor, and then it was a block party, I believe, down off of Wapping Road, Copper Beach area. And on those two occasions, because before we had placed limits, if the council just gave an exemption to the sound ordinance, it would be whatever decibel it would be. There was no limit. So if we got a complaint, it didn't matter what the decibel. So since then, on the past two occasions, what we did is we mirrored what Providence Police does. And Providence Police based it on a 75 decibel level.
Yeah.
So on the past two occasions, we did a 75 decibel level, and there was no issues. We didn't have any complaints. We didn't have any issues with that 75 decibel level.
Where does this 75 decibel level get measured?
So it's
Obviously
based-
not right next to the speaker.
Correct. So according to our ordinance, it's the receiving land use. So we would go to where the complainant is calling from, and we'd use our sound meter on the edge of the property from the complainant's.
So I'm roughly a half a mile as a crow flies from Ragged Island. If it's over 75 decibels, I can file a complaint,
Correct.
or I can file a complaint.
Correct. Anywhere. So
Anywhere.
wherever you're calling from, we will go to where they're calling from, stand on the edge of the property and take a couple of readings. And if it's over that, then that'd be an issue.
And when taking those readings, because also Bristol Ferry Road is a very loud road to begin with because it's a chip seal.
Correct.
Do we try and do it when cars or trucks aren't going by to try and?
We do. We'll
Get
take
an average.
multiple, yep. So all the officers are trained, and that has to be mitigated. We'll have to include that in the report. There's some locations that you'll never, if we're on East Main Road or West Main Road and we're taking it, we'll include that in our narrative, and that's up for the judge, the municipal court judge, to decide if it's a violation, because they'll have to take that into account.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
While
wait,
the
one more
chief is here,
question.
before he goes, you go ahead, Carl.
No, Dave, you go first.
Please.
Just for the benefit of others here, since the council is new, the last couple events we have issued decibel maximums. As you say, if you don't have one, then the sky is wide open for whatever, and there's no chance for anybody to have any legal complaint. And there have been very few complaints about this facility. I've been to some of the events there myself and enjoyed them. And I believe they probably have some sound equipment there that they kind of monitor. But there are some cases where individuals, don't want to hear the music and they're in the location, so they have to hear it. So I think it is good to assign a decibel level. The biggest problem is there is someone on file that has complained. Is that correct, Chief?
That's correct.
So at his property, even though he is very close and he is in the vicinity, and he just lives on the other side of Bristol Ferry, at his property, it falls within the 75 dB. So even though he says he's sitting at the concert and he's hearing it as if he's there, under the decibel maximum of 75, it doesn't help somebody like him. So because of the way our ordinance is structured, we'd either have to change it that the noise level is measured at the noise owner's generator's property, if we wanted to go that route, or just say we're not going to grant the variance and you have 65 at your property line. Essentially, that would be the only way to rectify that particular precedent
I
situation.
agree. The ordinance needs some work.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to
which we're not
address
gonna
that
get to.
separately because there is no upper limit. And you can't enforce anything. If there's, you mentioned that in another meeting. If you don't have a number, you can't enforce anything.
Correct.
You give a
That's why-
variance, it could be anything.
That's why we have the burden of doing that.
Yeah.
And it puts a burden on him, obviously. My suggestion would be to have a maximum of 70 decibels, you know, so we can't do anything at the property line. It would just be at anybody that called in, and there'd probably be very few that did. But they would have the option of getting the complaint lodged, you know. What are your thoughts about that, Chief?
70 decibels where?
At the complainant's property as opposed to 75, which is 5 dBs more than the ordinance currently allows for now. Is maximum of 65.
The only issue, if that would be just for residential districts. So if a complainant was a commercial business or a waterfront, they have up to 75 decibels at all times. So that would be lowering it for that
Yeah,
location.
I wouldn't,
So that
I
would
wouldn't be
the
talking,
only-
this is specific to this
So if
request
it's geared
right
just
now.
towards residential.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, if the council, we've done 75 previous 2 times, and that was just based on provenance, but whatever the council decides, we'll enforce.
Ms. Perry?
I just had a quick question, more of a clarifying, when you say the property line, let's say for instance, Matt has a couple of residences that abut his property. When you say property line, do you talk about the point at, like, let's say for instance, where the property meets the road, or is it where it abuts the property in question?
The officer would go to the point on the property of the complainant that's closest to the sound source.
Mhm.
So we would be,
Could be either.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Fortunately for him, those aren't the people that are complaining.
Oh, yeah, no,
They-
fortunately, I was
they
just
seem to like
I'm just asking because I've never dealt with
Yes.
it. The only noise I get is whenever Keith is speaking from his house and I just want to complain about it.
Right.
Most people do.
Does anybody have do you have a list? How many people have actually complained in some of these? I mean, do we have is this a major problem?
There was a resident on Davy Lane that has complained reference to the noise. And we did have a resident on Willow Lane that complained, and those, I believe, are the only 2 locations of complaints that we received
You
last year.
probably wouldn't remember when you tested them, what the actual levels that
Sure,
they.
so the
the
Willow
officer
Lane
found
one-
was?
Sure, so we have a reading from Davy Lane, which is about 3/10 of a mile from the location based on our Google. And the reading was, the 2 readings were 65.8 and 68.9 decibels, and that was about approximately 6:54 PM. And that was July 7th.
So 70 wouldn't help them either.
Correct.
Yeah,
A
so
lot
that's,
of
because from what I used to do sound at work, and it's really difficult to even measure some of this stuff with reflections and
Wind direction.
moisture in
The
the
only
air
thing you
and
can
things
say
like
to that is that wind direction has a big bearing in it. So on one night, you're not going to hear it. The next night you might. That's the biggest factor that the gentleman has to deal with.
Now, when your standard is as an officer and what you've seen other people doing, I've looked in the standard seems to be 75.
Correct. That's what we've seen, and that's what we based it on.
That's
for the
almost
last
like
2
a
times.
standard. That's why I picked that as a stipulation.
You see some, I don't know if it's a standard, but the best ordinance that we saw was Providence, where they actually addressed this issue based on their noise variance, and that's what we looked at. I believe the planning looked at it as well with me last year, and that's what we saw was that 75 decibels.
Would you like to see the ordinance changed so it actually has a maximum?
I think it would be great that we have something, because this way it's not ambiguous every single time, and we have something. I think makes our jobs a lot easier if you have a certain decibel that we can just go to the law book and say, this is what it is and this is what we need to enforce.
Okay, thank you.
I feel in this case where the time frame is 8:30, that the 75 decibel would be reasonable, in my opinion.
Okay, so I'll go back. We can have discussion as a council afterwards, but We need a motion to close the public
Motion to
hearing.
close public hearing?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. So can you read your motion again? It wasn't
I
seconded.
would, I would be very happy.
So
to
I
do
just
that.
want to make sure.
No, I just said approve the variance with the provision of the 75 maximum DBA limit as measured per ordinance 257.
Yeah,
From-
second and then for
Second.
discussion.
And just, and you mean from the complainant's lawn,
whatever the-
land?
It's whatever the
Okay,
ordinance
I
is.
just want
It's
to make
per the ordinance, and if you
That's
read it, I got a sheet, you
So-
want, this is it right here?
All right, so we're
And it tells
essentially
the-
not granting a variance.
There's no upper limit in the ordinance, just says
That is a
65.
variance.
But the thing is, what
It's
you're
it's a,
granting
it's a variance of 10
it's a
dB.
variance, which would be the waiver of the current ordinance.
Right.
So
That's-
setting a limit would not be granting a waiver.
Hmm?
If you can, I would suggest that it might be a little bit higher. It had been suggested 90 decibels at other meetings. The 75, I think is too low. For, well, the
They were-
immediate abutters haven't complained.
They were complaining at 68. That's what he was saying. The two complainers, where they weren't even at 70.
Understood. Yes, understood. But that person was also 3/10 of a mile away. So you're limiting what the volume can be if you're in a direct abutter. So
Which is
who
really,
haven't
really something
complained.
that we should consider doing. If it's, I mean, if there's that many people there, you're gonna hear noise from the people as well, let alone the amplified music. So it just puts a burden on the owner to keep it at a certain reasonable level, but especially if you consider it a family-friendly event with little kids and little ears.
Once you amplify
etc.
music, you're over 75 decibels.
And to
Right
put
on
in
that.
perspective,
Well, you
75
are-
decibels is an indoor dishwasher.
Right.
So to kind of limit that,
95 is your lawnmower.
exactly, so.
So technically, when I'm mowing my lawn, although it's in the ordinance, I can get a noise, but if I'm mowing my lawn, if Ragged Island is mowing their lawn at 95 decibels and it carries across the street and somebody complains, understood, depends on the wind direction. So
I think the lawnmowers is an exception in our ordinance.
it is. I'm just using that.
But it's
for
an
example,
example.
something
I
loud.
get it. Yeah.
You know, certain towns, you can't use leaf blowers anymore. Let's not go there.
I only came up with the numbers I did because of the few people that have complained. The officers have come out there and said, there is no complaint here, and that's at 75. It falls within 75.
They wouldn't have been able to do anything if it was 70.
Right.
Both of them were in the 60s.
But I think the limit would also go, it would be counterintuitive to them coming up before us for a variance. The variance is literally granting them a waiver from the current ordinance. To limit them is just kind of saying, yeah, you get one, but we're gonna cap you anyway.
You have to have a limit, otherwise
You
they,
don't have to have anything in the world, but what I'm saying is that it goes behind, that goes against what he's asking. He's asking, hey, can I get waived from what the current ordinance is for these specific dates? If we're gonna go, Chief, I don't know exactly how many individuals it is that we're talking about.
we
versus-
are giving them a
Excuse me, excuse
variance.
me,
Oh,
excuse
okay.
me. If we're gonna go against what the complaint of it, certain individuals in town that are probably gonna complain whether or not it's 55, 65, 75 versus the tax revenue that's gonna come up to the state, to the town based on sales, ticket sales, beer sales. This kind of is like reminiscent of the argument that we had a couple of years ago about even allowing them a variance when it came to the zoning. It's like we're gonna like tit for tat thing. They're asking for a variance on the current sound thing. We have to balance that out with the actual academic needs of the town. This is going to be a net positive for the town. To go completely on this like tit for tat thing is just completely counterintuitive.
My counter to that would be, if you grant a variance with no restrictions on it, then the sky's the limit. you generate.
But, yeah,
It's a
but we,
stipulation in the variance.
but
the
you
way I
could,
look at it.
you could also have a variance with a higher limit. So the 75 is the limit in a commercial area.
You
So
could.
Bill's sales can be at 75, but his neighbor next door who's in a residential can be at 65,
Right.
but they're abutters.
This is residential, correct?
It is agricultural now. I don't know what it is.
Still
zone now.
residential. Mhm.
So
I would prefer to see a higher decibel limit for these specific events. I think the higher decibel limit will, even though it's in place, it allows the police force a limit to get there.
If you give them a higher threshold, they'll have less incentive to make less noise at the source.
that's true.
And you're projecting more noise out. This, when they're doing it, they know they're gonna have to meet
I
this,
think
and you're
there's
you're not really impinging on them that much.
I think if you do this, you might be impinging.
That's a big
and-
piece of property
and
around there.
you might be canceling all the concerts after the first event. But we'll see.
Well, we'd have to see what we get for complaints.
Okay.
We were only talking 2 so far
Well,
with it.
it's assuming that the one is still living there because it was a rental, I believe, but.
Mr.
Mr.
President. We do already have 2 precedent, right? 2 times that we've done this with 2 organizations with the 75. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, one doesn't have any abutters, essentially.
But
It was out in the middle of the bay.
we have used this
Mhm.
twice with a 75 decibel limit. So I mean, I think we should consider doing the same.
So
Mhm.
as it stands now, there's a motion for 75, but no second.
No, it was a second, right, Miss Patton,
Ms. Patton.
Oh, okay.
and it was open for discussion to the council. Any further discussion?
I would just suggest if it doesn't pass at 75, then somebody throw another number out there. We'll go back to that one.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes 5-2. New business number 5. Request approval of a resolution to submit a proposed amendment for the Portsmouth Home Rule Charter for nonpartisan town council and school committee elections to the Secretary of State for inclusion for the next scheduled election. We have an example of Newport's charter. And Ms. McDowell, this is your agenda item, and I know the clerk, the canvasser, has a couple of questions as well.
Sure. I think the resolution is straightforward. We did approve to go forward with nonpartisan, bring it forth, and this is the resolution. I went back to minutes of 2020 Charter Review Committee and used some of their information, as well as I went to Middletown and Tiverton and got a glimpse of their wording on their resolution as well as their ballot, and this is what's being presented for a vote. Does it have to be read, or what do you know?
No, but my only comment on this is it'll be similar to what we just talked about with the tax. I think we should make the amendments to the charter, specifically how it's going to read, and put this together so that it's all one package rather than putting this out there and saying, okay, we want to be on the next agenda, next election, but we don't have the wording ready yet. So my request would be that we get the wording ready and then do this all at once. That's all.
Wording ready
It,
for
the change in the charter. So the charter is now going to stay XYZ and make it 100% foolproof.
I feel like that's reasonable and more aligned with what you're looking for, Mary.
Okay, so when you look at the other backup, the proposed amended charter wording, that does not suffice then? Is that different from what you're referring to? I did it for both the school department. I have the original and I have the proposed amended charter
So-
wording, and that's what they had talked about in the Charter Review Committee
So
in
there's
2020.
a couple other things that need to be, I
Sure.
think, need to be placed in there. One is, how many people, at what point do you trigger a primary? So if we're gonna look at an election of nonpartisan and say we have 7 people on the council, there's 14 people who are allowed to run, but 21 people sign up. Do we have a primary to trigger that down to 14? So there's a couple of things in there that need to be added. That's just me.
Okay.
I just wanted to be 100% before it goes upstate. That's all.
I agree. I've done some research, and this is probably what triggered when I announced it to my board of canvassers that I was researching. I have pulled not only the charters from Newport, but from Middletown, Tiverton, and East Providence. And in these charters, they do have sections that determine when is a primary election going to occur, how it is going to occur. This is a substantive change to the way people vote in Portsmouth. The voters need to know these kinds of things before they're asked for any question. And they need to know that their charter has been reviewed and that the conversation that Ms. McDowell had indicated back in November happens and not just a resolution. As a matter of fact, there is nobody for me to give this resolution to. Are you calling a special election? Are you asking for a special election? Because from the resolution, you're instructing me to give this to the Department of State. There is no calendar for an election right now. There are no certification forms in existence right now. So my question to you is, are you calling a special election right now for these questions?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not. In the resolution, if approved, this amendment will take effect on the next regularly scheduled biennial state general election on the first Tuesday. So I am not calling a special election by any means.
Okay.
This is just in preparation in the event that anything comes up in terms of a special election. I think we should be ready and we shouldn't be,
But by being
backpedaling.
ready,
Yep.
as the president has indicated,
Yeah.
the review should be made of the complete charter that we have and cover all of the instances that will occur when this change takes effect, so that the voters know, just like the taxpayers need to know certain things, our voters have the right to know too, what is being asked of them and what they're voting for.
So your primary area is the primary, correct? That you're concerned about? Is
No,
that-
I'm for everything. What the ballot's going to look like. East Providence tells us exactly what the ballot's going to be looking like, what the Charter Commission looks like when you make a change to these kinds of things. These are substantive changes. Let's see. Got 11 pages of things that I'm going through, and I will come up with the report that I will be presenting to the Board of Canvassers. It's a public document. It'll be presented to the council. But it's not just the candidate will no longer have a party designation. The candidates need to know how to run. There's a lot of election legislation right now. I have 53 bills that are being heard and some of them this week. Probably about 30 of them are being heard this week up at the State House. It involves fusion voting, which is really cool, and that's where both parties can nominate a candidate. There are things on ranked choice voting. There's all kinds of things. These kinds of changes need to be done deliberately, and the voters need to know that those resolutions, when they're passed, that are given by this body, have been investigated and that you have a plan for how this will happen if they choose to vote for this. And that's all I'm asking, is that the process be respected, that you go through the charter review, completely look at it, look at a variety, not just Newport, because our community is not exactly like Newport. It's similar to Middletown. There are a few things that we have in common with Tiverton too. And even though East Providence is a city, they do things as well. Just investigate these kinds of things. Come up, and it's not just when you run for council that you won't show any R or D next to you. For example, in a primary, if there is no primary for one of the parties, then I have to have a separate ballot for a nonpartisan. And there have been at least 3 instances since I've been in my job where the Republican Party has not had any primary. So Republicans would not have your local candidates on their ballot like they normally would. So you would have to have a separate one. So there's a lot involved. There's a lot of administrative planning. There's a lot of planning for the question itself. So I would encourage you, take advantage. I'm doing this research. I need to know, my board needs to know how this happens. Just take it methodically, go through what the vision is that this council has, and present it to the voters as a packet, as the president said.
Ms. Schultz, thank you so much for this information. I think it's evident where I stand on this whole nonpartisan thing, but I think it's further evident that this is not even a half-baked idea. I think this idea is still better. And saying that we're building a plane midair would be an insult to Boeing, who doesn't know how to build a plane either way. Would this resolution, it was more of a clarifying question, although I kind of know the answer to it. Would this resolution need to be approved by the General Assembly since we're going to be amending our town charter?
No.
Okay.
No, it would,
If it went.
if it passed, they would then go to the
So if
General
it passed
Assembly.
here, it'd have to go to the General Assembly where.
for a clarification, and they would review the charter
And we could still.
and would either up or down to vote it. So technically, yes, the General Assembly could choose not to pass our charter amendment. They've only done it once before in the past. That I'm aware of. Madden?
I have a question. So you mentioned a certain number. You need to, what is a safe number, or
Normally,
what
it's
has it been in
twice the spaces.
In Newport, they have it as twice. For example, if there are 7 seats that are being voted for, then double that seat, that would be 14 candidates declared in June, then they would automatically go to the November ballot. So you
But
wouldn't
they
have
also
to.
have
they would-
wards, so they could have 3 people in Ward 1, and then you would have a primary for
Yeah,
2.
and that's why they're different. That's why I wouldn't
They're-
say, take
yeah, they are different.
Newport's completely, because they do have wards.
In many ways,
But,
ways than one.
Or if for the school committee, if they were only running 3 seats, then 6 would trigger it. Or if they were running 4 that year, then 4 would trigger it. There are some communities where it really doesn't matter how many people are running for that particular office. They're all on the ballot. Do you want to have 28 people on a ballot in November vying for 7 seats? So.
But either way,
But you could.
you could.
Put
You could.
whatever.
But all that information should be part of the language in the charter. And we're done with it, so that if it does go to if it does get passed or does go on a ballot, all that information's there. So everybody can make an informed decision. That's all. I'm not saying no. The council can say whatever. I'm just saying, let's get it all in a nice package with a bow before we go forward.
I agree, and just, if this does go forward, it would be nice to see town council and school committee separate questions, not rolled together. Because I've heard support of one.
So have nonpartisan as school
Like,
committee, nonpartisan town
yes.
council. And
Yeah.
that would
For
be 2 questions on the
clarifications.
ballot rather than just one total question.
I think they discussed that at the charter review, I think, back in 2020. Yep.
When I looked at this, I thought it was a clarification on whether this language was acceptable for the resolution. Do you have any issues with that in itself?
The language for the resolution is determined with council and you and the administrator. And then it is the responsibility of the Board of Canvassers to take that information and present it to the voters. We have to tell them what would happen if it is passed,
Okay.
if it's approved, and if it's not approved.
Gotcha. So, so basically, I'm looking for direction here. You're basically asking us to come up with the charter changes that would make this okay. But that being said, can we get your raw data that you've dug up already so we don't have to reinvent the wheel?
I was going to compile it. I mean, I'm giving a report to my Board of Canvassers.
Yeah.
I'm happy to give that report to you.
I
Well,
just
I'm
see the
encouraging you
data.
to get a charter commission together, not just get the stakeholders, get the voters involved in this. There are young people out there, 17-year-olds who can now vote in primaries. Let's go to the high school. Let's get their opinions. Let's get from the senior
We're
center.
not at the point of an opinion here. We're at a point of coming up with documented language.
I
People that agree with this principle, because
Yeah,
people
there's-
are going to be against this principle that aren't going to help to formulate this
But
language.
you need to have more clarifying notions if you want to get it to voters. Voters need to know what their primaries are going to look like.
Sure.
Why am I giving you 2 ballots? Okay? Why would I do that? People are used to voting. They have an absolute conniption fit if I change their precinct because it's not available for a special election. And I get accused of changing their voting locations just to confuse them. So this is,
This is one where you're going to make a lot of enemies.
you know what? I'm fine with that. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be in this job if I didn't mind making enemies. But
Sure.
the thing is that I have to have the voters in the forefront here. They need the information. I'm asking you to thoughtfully go through the process, go through the charter, word it, get a system that you can support and that you can argue. These are the benefits of it. These are the disadvantages of it. Have the conversation. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I want to ask you a question.
Yes,
Please come here. I want to,
So,
I just,
so
we're asking them to
What-
write something for the charter.
we don't
Do they
need,
have the charter review committee people who are doing that? I mean,
That's,
we don't need the a charter
No.
review committee
No.
to make this change.
no,
But
I'm not.
I do agree, we do need clarifying information to make sure that when this is to the voters, it's not going to get rejected at the State House, and then the voters have all the information they need. So that's why I'm saying, if we could just get those other fine-tuned things done, and then bring it back.
And honestly, it is not due until 90 days before the election. It won't be certified. The certification process will not even begin. The calendar for the 2026 elections will be distributed in February by the Secretary of State's office, and it will be how to run for office, because candidates need to know all of that information as well. So the deadline for a question to be on the November ballot in 2026 is August of 2026.
If, and I'll use the Cicilline instance, how long was it before the
If,
election happened?
when there's a special election, then it is 50 days prior to the election.
Which wouldn't give us enough time to put this on the ballot if there was a special election.
You would have time to put it on a ballot if you, well,
You just said 90 days, but that's for the general election.
no, that's the minimum time.
Okay.
That's the due date, the drop dead due date. If I don't have it in by August, a certified question in August, then it's not on the ballot.
But if,
But
and I'll continue with the Cicilline thing, but if Gabe Amel says, I'm out, and then there's a special election in 50 days, could this go on that special election?
That would be-
If everything was ironed out.
if Greg Amo went, there would definitely be a primary. So the question is not due before a primary. It's due before the the general. So you would
So
still
50
have,
days would be the primary. Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure that,
you have
ducks are
time
in
to
a-
work this out. I mean, you have a lot on your plate right now, but I know that, but it deserves just as much scrutiny as the budget. You're presenting something to the public. It deserves the scrutiny. It deserves the time.
And I do believe, Jackie, that we will be able to take the time to educate and to inform the voters.
Well, that's the job of the Board of Canvassers.
Yeah,
So-
well, I think it's our job too, those who are proposing this. And my motto is always be prepared. So I'd like to get this prepared and be ready in the event that anything comes at a surprise for us. That's all.
but can we get through the charter information and try and mirror it, look at 4 or 5 different ones and look specifically for me at those, where do we trigger primaries? I, for one, am not for 28 people on a ballot. But this council might be. Just let's get all the wording done so that we're ready for prime time when it comes.
Yep.
That's all. So. Is there, I guess, a motion to table this until we have that information? Or do you?
Unfortunately, I guess.
So moved.
I would make a motion to table it, but I would like to see the broad information that you have for us. We got to start somewhere, Jackie. You've already done some research. We're,
I have printed out and highlighted
I know you
4
have.
different, you've gotten one of them. You've gotten the Newport one, so you need the 3-1. I've gone through our home rule charter. I'll summarize it for you.
Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate
Thank
that. Is there a motion and a second to table until we get the rest of the information? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Hamilton, I just want to clarify, because originally it was Ms. McDowell. And then Mr. Gleason then tried to make the motion, and then, so it kind of bounced back and forth, so I want
So the only motion that was made and was Mr. Reese, seconded by Ms. Patton. These 2 motions never got a second. Was how I remember it. I hope this next one's quick. This, new business number 6, request approval for promotion of Mr. Paul Rodrigues to the Deputy Director of Public Works, which would take effect on May
Brian,
2nd.
before you speak, Brian.
Yeah. You're leaving on May 1st, so his takes a second. So,
He's already leaving.
I know.
No, look at him. I mean, literally right now.
So, Council, President, Council, I'm recommending the promotion of Paul Rodrigues to the position of Director of Public Works, effective upon the retirement of Brian Woodhead at the end of April. You all have my formal recommendation memo as part of your agenda package, so I'll just emphasize a few key points. Paul's been with us since 2019 as the Deputy Director and has also served as our Solid Waste and Recycling Coordinator. He's been an invaluable asset to our town and his department. He's demonstrated exceptional leadership, dedication, and a hands-on approach to problem solving. His experience both here in Portsmouth and throughout his career has prepared him to take on this role seamlessly. He's already proven his capability by managing major projects, overseeing daily operations of public works, and maintaining strong relationships with staff and community members. I have full confidence that Paul will continue to lead the department effectively and maintain the high standards that we set for public works in Portsmouth. I respectfully request your confirmation of his promotion and appointment as the next Director of Public Works. Thank you for your consideration of this.
I'll make a
recommendation.
motion.
Mr. Reese,
I'll make a motion to promote Paul Rodrigues as Director of Public Works.
Second.
Mr. Woodhead, did you want to say something?
Well, I just want to echo what the town administrator said too, and the recommendation of Paul Rodrigues to be appointed as Director of Public Works. I just want to just give you a little heads up. Public Works plays a crucial role in town. I just want to touch base on a few items. We handle a lot of things in town. We work with the town planner on both new and ongoing subdivisions. We attend technical review committee meetings. We manage our road surface ratings. planning and implementing of the paving projects, snow removal, drainage projects. And we oversee the town award grants to ensure compliance with all necessary paperwork. Additionally, managing the yearly budgets and addressing issues on prudence along with the paving on prudence. And that's just some of our department's responsibilities. And as deputy director, Paul has continuously exceeded the expectations of his role. He has demonstrated the knowledge and the experience in all the areas, and he is already well-versed in ongoing projects within the department. Paul's active involvement in these projects and his dedication to assuring their successful completion makes him an ideal candidate to take on the responsibilities as a director. So I have confidence in Paul's ability and continue leading the department, and I would strongly support his promotion as the Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Mr. Leeson.
Just one question. I have the utmost confidence that Mr. Paul is going to work out just fine. I'm just curious, you may whether he meets all the details of the job application. I assume he does. And just out of curiosity, what type of degree do you have? Okay.
Do you mind coming to the mic? Thank you.
You just want to answer that one more time, just so.
Sure. Paul Rogers, 18 Orchard Avenue, Middletown, Rhode Island. I don't have any degrees, engineering degrees or anything like that, but I've been, I'll read aloud. I've had 27 years of experience in the city of Newport, 11 years before that as a service manager of a truck dealership, and then 6 years under Brian Woodhead. I think my experience exceeds any
I agree.
degrees.
I'm sorry I asked that question. I just assumed based on the job, what do we call this thing here? Description that you qualified, you had a degree. So, but I know you have the School of Hard Knocks behind you.
Okay.
Ms. McDowell?
Yes. I just have some thoughts on process as usual. I believe it's healthy for a community to have competitive hiring practices for key municipal positions. It is good for everyone, the people within applying for the position, the town team who interviews and sees what is out there in the marketplace, how our people shore up to what is out there, hearing from others about their municipal challenges and how they deal with them and how they've met them. We can learn so much from a hiring process that is open, transparent, and requires all to go through the application process. I am a person who believes that positions such as department heads should be advertised with an interview process that is meaningful and deliberate, and a selection process that is based on the best candidate. And Mr. Rodriguez, thank you for so much for your service to Portsmouth, and you may very well be the best candidate for that position. My comments are not about a person. They are about a process that can be healthier for our community and healthier for our departments. I cannot vote for this appointment, not because I do not have faith that you can do the job, but because I believe that there is a better way to ensure that you indeed are the best candidate for this position. And I certainly hope you understand my position.
Yes, I do.
Any other questions, comments? Lisa?
Do I have to say who I am? Thank you. I might just suggest that we looked at Paul 6 years ago and we hired him. And part of the HR process is succession planning. So to promote from internal, I would say is a better thing. Somebody who knows the department than looking externally. We will absolutely be going externally for his replacement if he is hired, but succession planning is part of this process, and I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Mr. Wheeler?
I just happen to have personal knowledge. I had
Mr.
the
Wheeler,
pleasure,
I-
Scott Wheeler,
Okay,
58
thank
Richard Drive. I had the pleasure of being Paul's direct supervisor for a good portion of those 27 years. And I can tell you, I've told many people with the city of Newport that one of the biggest mistakes they ever made was to let Paul Rodrigues leave. And I told Brian at the time when he called me regarding his recommendation that I couldn't think of any other bigger personal loss for the city of Newport, because I can tell you, he is an exceptional employee and former employee of the year with City of Newport, beloved by the public. And I certainly understand the thought about it. But to lose someone of Paul's value and take that risk, I just think would be a massive, massive mistake. Don't make the mistake that the City of Newport made and lose Paul Rodrigues.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Any other comments or questions? Ms.
I
Patton?
just have a question for a replacement. Will they go out and advertise?
Yes.
that? Is that?
Yes, for the deputy position,
They will.
correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Just
Any
to
fur-
comment that the due diligence of the hiring with that replacement, I think covers what you were describing and does support the fact that due diligence was done when hired and will again with a replacement.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-1.
Congratulations, Paul.
Congratulations.
I'd let it go longer, Paul, but we got a lot more to do. Sorry. New business number 7, request approval of actuarial services. RFP was RFP 25-002. Ms. Marsden.
First, I just want to say congratulations to Paul. We really enjoy working with you in finance. Honorable Council, on February 6th, the town advertised and requested proposals for actuarial services with a due date of February 27th. We received 3 proposals. One was GovInvest, who we are currently contracted with. They are now named TrueComp for a total cost over 4 years of $167,443. Nyhart came in at $125,400, and Actual Consulting Group came in at $63,000. GovInvest is our current actuarial with a licensing agreement with the town that commenced on December 8th, 21. The school department does have a contract with GovInvest that expires on August 11th of this year. After 3 reporting periods, the town did invite proposals from actuarial firms. Nyhart was the town's previous OPEB actuarial before making the switch to GovInvest. Both the town and school are familiar with their reporting. After careful consideration and discussion between the school finance director, the town human resource director, and myself, I recommend contracting with Nyhart for the actuarial services over the next 4 years.
Any questions from Ms. Marsden? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, new business number 8. An update on NOAA's federally funded Growing Regional Resilience Coordination on Aquidneck Island with Ms. Hitchin and Ms. Mayotte. Good evening.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I know you've had a long night, so I'll try and make this quick, but I wanted to present you all with a presentation on an update on some recent federal funding that we were awarded from NOAA to grow regional resilience coordination on Aquidneck Island. And I do have some slides attached. Great. Let me just check to see if this works.
Yeah, you got to give it a second to,
Okay.
it's not instantaneous.
Good to know. Thank you so much. All right. So like I said, my name is Paige Mai. I'm the Director of Climate Resilience at the Aquidneck Land Trust. And I'm here tonight to present you with this quick presentation about our work and the progress that we've made so far. So tonight I'll go through a brief recent history of the regional resilience work that's been done for the past nearly 3 years on Aquidneck Island. I'll go through some basic grant information, an overview of our main activities, introduce our new staff, and provide some ongoing areas of assistance.
Come on.
Sure, thank you. This slide has some animation, so if you just want to bear with me for a minute. But this is a brief timeline going back to 2017 about just a select few opportunities that we had to work on regional resilience. In 2017, there's much more, I would just want to say, that goes beyond 2017 and more than I could include in this slide. But to give you a sense of the work that we're building on, I wanted to showcase this because I think it's really important to show that we're building on a lot of previous efforts here, dating back to 2017 in the Aquinic Island Resilience Strategy done with URI's Coastal Resources Center, the 2018 Island Waters Project. In 2019 and 2020, all 3 island municipalities went through the Infrastructure Bank's Municipal Resilience Program. At that point, there was a lot of actions that were identified. And basically the impetus for a lot of this regional resilience work was that in those 3 workshops, there was a lot of actions and not a lot of capacity to tackle them. And so from those workshops, the bank worked together with all 3 municipalities to create a position that I held at the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank from April 2022 until June of 2024 as the Rhode Island Regional Resilience Coordinator. And that was a grant-funded pilot position. We were able to make a lot of great progress. And in that time, we finished up the military installation resilience review that you see here. We also participated at the tail end of Newport's and the complete portion of Middletown's technical or community assistance project with the STEMP network. Portsmouth had already completed that. And in that time, as the regional resilience coordinator at the infrastructure bank, we were able to apply for this grant opportunity that I'm talking to you about tonight. And it's through NOAA's Climate Resilience Regional Challenge. You can go to the next slide. And so this award, you can see the map in the upper right of the states that were selected to receive this award. We created this application in really close collaboration with all of the municipal planning departments and the Navy on the island. And we have the Aquinic Land Trust serving as the host organization. We gathered over 20 letters of support during the application process from a lot of community partners and organizations. And we were successfully awarded $2 million for the next 4 years from NOAA's Office for Coastal Management. And I want to just highlight that this was a really competitive application process. We were selected as one of 19 projects out of across the country, over 870 applications. So we're very lucky to have this funding. And I know that the federal funding is a hot topic now, and we've seen some really good signs from our grant officer and from our contacts at NOAA that this funding is moving forward. So I just wanted to make a note of that.
So we don't, or you don't have it in the bank yet?
We have been able to make draws. The way that the process works is that we technically have the full funding in our government bank account, and we've been able to successfully make draws, but we can't draw the full 2 million. We have to draw as we spend. Okay. So far we've been successful in doing that. But that's the state of federal funding at this point. So I wanted to highlight some topic areas that we are working on. You can see that it's a pretty broad list ranging from water quality to coastal resilience, flood reduction and stormwater management, ecological restoration, sustainability, food systems, transportation, particularly around multimodal transportation, land use and emergency management and preparedness. So these next few slides, I will talk about our, main activities with this opportunity. But I also wanted to highlight that that this has been a really strong collaboration with all of the island's municipal planning departments. And this is a picture of many of them when we did a field trip to Martha's Vineyard to look at some aspirational organizations. They have the Martha's Vineyard Commission out there that looks at a lot of similar project areas. And we're doing our due diligence to see what the process is for other coastal New England communities in particular and how they're facing these regional climate challenges. So our first activity is building capacity to provide municipalities and project partners with technical assistance in 3 main categories, those being grant writing, project management, and community engagement. In those categories, we heard directly from all of the municipal planning departments that for these climate projects that they needed the most help with. So the outcome, if we're able to do this successfully over the next 4 years, is that Aquinic Island has the necessary enduring capacity lasting beyond this grant period to prioritize, apply for funding, and manage collaborative resilience and sustainability projects that reduce risk to the community and our environment. Slide. So our second activity here is creating an island-wide climate resilience action plan. And this is something that we've seen a lot of other successful regions do across the country, looking at how can we best prioritize what we need to get done. And the outcome at the end of this grant period, really the next couple of years, we're hoping to get this action plan done in, is to have short and long-term resilience actions prioritized, coordinated, and implemented across the island. And I really want to stress the implementation part of this. You know, we are coming at this very action-forward, action-oriented. We know that there's a lot of pressing challenges, and we want to see them get done, and we have the capacity to do that now. So that's a main point that I want to say here on this slide. On the next slide. Our third activity, and it's been talked about tonight at council in various different ways, is engaging and educating the community, and perhaps some new and more meaningful ways. I think that there's a lot of room for improvement with how we engage all community members in solutions, and really meeting people where they're at. I think town councils are a great forum for certain discussions, but I think we are also looking forward to maybe going to the why and meeting people where they're at. Can we have engagement opportunities with folks that we can bring it closer to where they are and where they already are spending their time? And we have a community engagement manager that I'll introduce tonight just specifically for that. So we're really looking at doing this in a way that I think is different than we've done in the past, or maybe more broader and a more dedicated effort to make sure that we're having all members of the community actively engaged in these solutions. Next slide. And our last activity here is developing a long-term sustainable framework for island-wide resilience while advancing on-the-ground projects. And this is beyond the timeframe of the grant. So after 4 years, we certainly hope that this grant provides us the groundwork so that we are able to become a successful organization on our own after that, and keep providing this capacity to the municipalities and the Navy. So the outcome is a framework would be implemented that allows for effective island-wide collaboration using existing community strengths and enhances the capacity of partner organizations. And on that note, I just wanted to say that we know that there's a lot of great organizations that exist on the island that we want to be able to engage with them and utilize their strengths. We're not trying to recreate any wheels. We know that there's a lot of great work already ongoing, but how can we be additive to that and help facilitate some cross-learning across these organizations?
Great. Thank you, Paige. Any questions for Ms. Meyer? Mr. Gleason?
Could you tell me, going back to some of your earlier slides here, but maybe you'll know the answers. Your collaborative resilience and sustainability. Can you explain what that means?
Mhm.
I mean, what kind of projects do you see coming down the road that will help these areas?
Yeah, so there's actually a slide later on that says example project support list, if you could get to that one.
Is that the one we're talking about?
The next one after this, yeah. So we're looking at a variety of regional and municipal specific projects. So on a regional basis, we obviously share a drinking water supply. Our beaches, we can all learn from, solutions that we implement at First Beach, we might be able to implement at Second Beach. Bike and pedestrian pathway improvements are inherently regional as they need to connect. We're looking at regional hazard mitigation planning. We're actually really close on, and you'll hear from Leah Hitchin next on our process with our regional hazard mitigation plan. We also have an ongoing Navy-based compatible land use study with all the island municipalities in the Navy. Specific to Portsmouth, there's multiple projects, but one that I wanted to highlight that we have ongoing right now is we're looking at some flood mitigation work on West Shore Road and working really closely with Brian and Leah and other staff.
So just to try and put a solution on what you're trying to do. In the case of West Shore Road, there's obviously a flooding problem. What do you do to fix that? What are the mitigation plans?
So for specifically for West Shore Road, it's a downhill road that has a solar array next to it that's causing some flooding issues, we believe. We're looking, and right now the road lacks really any stormwater runoff infrastructure. So we're looking at solutions with, actually, this is part of a SNEP, a Southeast New England program, SNEP stormwater planning series. So we're working with some technical experts there. Brian and Leah are involved. And we're looking at what solutions are going to be best fit for that site in particular. So that work is currently ongoing. I don't have an answer for what the solution looks like, but it's improving some infrastructure to better manage the flooding and the stormwater.
Okay. How about the resiliency for island beaches? What do you do other than doing restorations? What we talk about all the work that's being done. I have no feel for what
Sure.
you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, so for island beaches, this is one thing that we're looking at in Newport. They have a ongoing resilience committee for First Beach and looking at how can we protect First Beach so that we're looking at more as a system with the drinking water supply reservoir behind it. Again, this is a capacity building grant, so we're providing capacity to help look at these projects and facilitate learning across municipal boundaries. In many cases, we work with consulting firms, like for example, in Newport, the city of Newport is working with Fuston O'Neill, among other consulting firms, to look at the resilience for First Beach. And with us in our position to look more regionally, I think we're really looking forward to being involved in that process, sharing what we learn with folks from Middletown who have similar issues at Second Beach, for example. And if there's other issues that we can, or other learnings that we can share for beaches in Portsmouth, I think that's, the goal with a lot of this. That's
So I'll
helpful.
just ask one more question. I'll leave
Sure.
you alone.
Yeah.
So is most of this money, is it just for research or are there actually plan implementation methods that you can employ?
Yeah, a lot of it is, it's a capacity building grant, which means that it funds mostly staff time and the climate resilience action plan. But our staff time is used for project implementation. So we're really looking forward to be able to, our planning departments across the island have a lot on their plates. And this is where we come in with being able to provide extra capacity to help move projects forward that they need help with. And a lot of these times it's in this climate resilience area of projects.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Mann? Thank you very much. You wanted to introduce your,
Yes, tonight we have Glennie LeBaron here. She's our community engagement manager. And she comes from, most recently, she was on Block Island as their resiliency coordinator and has done a lot of excellent work before that at a land trust in New Hampshire. She is a great addition to the team. And we also have, who's not here tonight, Jamie Haynes-Matthews, who is our resilience and sustainability specialist, which will act as our project manager for a lot of this work. We're really looking forward to this effort. I think that this is a really unique opportunity for us to build on a lot of work that we've done in the past, provide that extra capacity to our planning departments, which so desperately need it. And we're thankful for your time tonight.
so going forward, if a council member had a issue that they may think falls under this would be to bring it to the planning department and they could possibly run it through you and see if
Yeah.
there's any funds available to research it on your end. And then if it was a project that we wanted to move forward with, you would also be helpful at trying to find grants to help cover those costs.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good description.
And no project's going to be done without coming forward to the council to say, hey, here's what we're looking at doing on West Shore Road. We want to put in drainage. We're going to go through this person's yard and we're going to drain West Shore Road out onto Narragansett Bay. And we've got a CRMC approval and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, everything that we do project implementation wise will go through the appropriate channels and regulatory agencies.
Appreciate that. Mr. Reese?
Yes, I just did have a question. Something that always bothered me is down in Island Park, we've got the old stone bridge.
Yeah.
And strengthening, I mean, that's a piece of critical infrastructure.
Mhm.
And that's Teddy's Beach, I guess. So are any plans to make improvements for that, to strengthen that? Because if that goes out, we lose that whole side of all the marinas and everything.
Yeah, I think that's something that has been brought to our attention. There's, from my knowledge, I think that there's been ongoing conversation with DOT about gaining access to the site to make sure that, to get a site assessment. And I think it's in the conversations at this point are between the town and DOT.
Unfortunately. You hit the nail on the head on that one. All right. I don't believe we need any motions unless you want to receive this and place it on file. We just
Yeah.
thank you to continue to work with Leah and Aaron and Brian and Paul in the future.
Yeah,
We appreciate your help. Do I have a
absolutely.
motion to receive this and place it on file.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Paige. Next up, public hearing number 2 for the evening. Public hearing to approve the draft hazard mitigation plan and forward it off to REMA, who would then forward it off to FEMA.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Good evening, Ms. Hitchin.
Good evening. How are you? Everybody need to stretch a little. Some of
Oh.
us have been here for 4 hours.
We did see you on the beach in Martha's Vineyard, though.
I wasn't,
You stick out.
I don't know how. Over the course of the last year, the municipalities on Aquidneck Island, Portsmouth, Middletown, and Newport have drafted a regional hazard mitigation plan for Aquidneck Island. The regional effort was funded by a BRIC grant, also known as a Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant from FEMA with technical assistance from VHB and our own Paige Myatt. I want to thank her for all the work that she's done over the last couple of years at RIB and now at Aquidneck Island Land Trust. She's been phenomenal. The Rhode Island, it's getting late. The Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan was prepared by committee members, which consisted of municipal staff, fire and police chiefs, Naval Station Newport, and community representatives. Municipalities are required to adopt an updated hazard mitigation plan every 5 years. Adopting a FEMA-approved plan makes communities eligible for pre-disaster and post-disaster funding opportunities. This regional hazard mitigation plan will be the first multi-jurisdictional HMP approved in the state. So we're looking forward to that first place trophy. Producing a plan on the regional basis has obviously numerous benefits such as cost savings, coordinated efforts across jurisdictions, and long-term sustainability. Most importantly, the plan recognizes that all 3 municipalities face similar hazards and share the same concerns regarding all impacts of natural hazards. Tonight, I'm asking the town council to authorize the submission of the draft hazard mitigation plan to the Rhode Island EMA and FEMA for review and comment. The plan, which is fairly thick in content, has been on the town website, and I did forward it to you numerous weeks ago, actually back on February 26th. We have an opportunity for the public comment to make comments on the plan online, and that is open until March 26th. So I am asking for you to adopt this plan as presented.
Okay, I will open it up for questions or comments from the council and also the audience, specifically to content issues. We're not looking to fix typographical errors. If there's a 2 where it's supposed to be 2, we don't need to know that. That'll be fixed through the process. But if there's anything specific in terms of the regional hazard mitigation plan that concerns you, now is the time. Anyone on the council? Mr. Gleason.
Believe it or not, Leah, I read the whole thing, except Middletown and Newport, so it's not really all of it. Only 200 pages. So I did put my comments online, but there are a couple of things that maybe you can help me out with. We originally talked about there being 4.2 miles of road that would cost $19 million to reconstruct if they were damaged. As it turns out, it appears that there's 1.2 miles, 1.6 miles in Portsmouth. So the question is, should we be looking at mitigation efforts of planting shrubs and changing and added swales, or should we really start looking at elevating roads in town?
I honestly think it's going to be a combination of using all the tools in the toolbox. A lot of plantings, specifically that we talked about last town council meeting with the STIP. Park Ave is very inundated and floods frequently, and probably the most beneficial project for that is raising the road, coupled with plantings, swales, natural ways to alleviate flooding.
Have there ever been any types of methods that you could use to install a check valve on storm drain piping? That, specifically in an area like Park Avenue or Common Fence Point, where the piping comes underneath the road 24 from Bluebell Cove and ends up flooding on Anthony Road. Have you ever heard of that technique, and is that something you would consider?
I think everything's on the table at this point where, I'm not super familiar with your check valve example that you just presented, but just going back to the West Shore project that Paige referred to a little while ago, it's a combination of maybe going underground to another abutter's property for stormwater diversion, or adding swales, adding numerous infrastructure benefits to alleviate whatever situation that we're talking about.
Okay. The other thing I mentioned before was the issue that was brought up on how trees can be in effect on flooded areas and be a hazard. And whether we could promote more money for tree trimming on the island as a whole is one comment. Also, when we talk about protecting people during a storm, there's a section there that talks about structural improvements at the old high school gym. Do you have any feel for the magnitude of the dollars, or what needs to be done structurally to?
That's a very specific, pinpointed question. I can't answer that off the
okay.
top of my head, but I'm assuming it's expensive.
Okay. And do you know whether that's the only place that we have on the island in Portsmouth right now that would be a gathering place? I mean, can we use a new gym?
Ray Perry, our EMA director, is really involved with all these matters, and
He's got his hand up.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I think the answer is no at the new gym.
I think it is too, but it's.
Mr. Perry.
curious. He's online?
Yep, he's getting remuted in a second here. Unmuted.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I'm calling from Bogota, Colombia. So just a couple questions there. They asked about the check valve type of mechanism. That's used in a lot of locations. We've discussed it in the hazard mitigation planning process. I have a sample one in my office. I'm not there right now, but that's a good mitigation tool when we start putting up barriers, because we're not only worried about nowadays flooding coming in from the ocean side, but because of the comprehensive amount of rain that is falling inland, all right, we could actually get flooding that we didn't normally have even during a hurricane. A lot of it originating from water flowing from the inland towards the coast. And in fact, they manage actually the barriers up in Providence a little bit differently now, because they're not only worried about the storm surge coming in, but what's going to be coming from behind the barrier that could flood the city. So those check valves, we do have them available, and they are a very good mitigation tool. The other thing I know you mentioned about the gym there, yeah, the new field house gym, that ceiling was not reinforced, but we've looked at the gyms. We ultimately, I really think the safest gym is the Portsmouth High School, the old gym. It is much more protected. It's in a much more stronger location, just from windage and all that sort of stuff. We have an engineer looking at that right now, also from a powering perspective. So anyways, I just thought I'd feed that based on the questions that were being asked.
That's good information. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ray.
Sorry I had to call in from Colombia.
Enjoy your vacation.
Oh, thank you.
He's not-
Yeah, it's good. It's really nice, fun.
Awesome.
Before,
Enjoy.
before you leave the phone, maybe you answer this question, because the next one is, it talks about in the report, repurposing the Roger Williams Bay Point. Is that something you would consider for putting people during a hurricane? Or what would we be repurposing it to?
Are you asking me, Ray Perry? So.
If you have that answer, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, we get a number of requests for grants and stuff like that for certain infrastructure projects. That's a unique asset. We don't have, a lot of capacity, like hotel capacity here in Portsmouth, but it is in the flood zone. And so I would always be cautious about investing a lot of resiliency stuff in that, in an area, and something that's in the flood zone, because again, we might not be able to access it, and that's tax dollars going into it. So I'd always be looking for something that's probably in a much more stable type of an environment.
I agree.
And access to it too. There's some, the building might be okay, but the access might be difficult.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
That's all I have.
Speak out.
Yeah, I just have one question regarding bridges, and Councilman Reese alluded to this earlier, but when you say secure the structural evaluation of the stone bridge abutment owned by RIDOT, how realistic is that we're going to be able to do that, do you think, Leah?
I believe that that goal action was in the hazard mitigation plan from 5 years ago, and it's just something we want to hold on to and continue to invest and look into. It's not something that we'd actually take out of the hazard mitigation plan, but I'm being optimistic, as you like to call yourself, that at one point in time, we will come to a consensus on that.
Because really, it's a high priority, right, in terms of mitigation and flooding,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And I mean, we have to impress upon the state somehow that it has to be dealt with, but, okay, thanks.
Any further questions or any questions from the audience? Hearing none, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And next, if all questions have been answered, do we have a motion to forward the regional hazard mitigation draft plan to Rhode Island
So moved.
Emergency Management?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Griggs.
Again, as suggested, I would just, after going through it, there are some changes that need to be made. We could just go through it with a fine tooth brush and send it off.
In terms of,
Contextual changes or the?
There's some errors in
typos?
there.
Typos.
I'll be glad to give you my list, but I think that we as a town should look at it again and look at it for accurateness.
it will come back to the town council for adoption after FEMA and REMA make their comments and bless it. It will come back here for adoption.
So, but if we make changes after they've blessed it, as long as they're not structural changes, it's
As long
okay.
as they're not structural changes.
Just suggestion, there's some clarifications that should be looked at.
Well,
We'll do them, you can do them now, you can do them later.
Would
How
they be
many do you have?
significant, or what kind of nature?
Well,
are
it
they?
talks about a sewer line from Lawton's Valley to Middletown on Jefferson Lane, for one thing.
Mhm.
And there's an Atlantic Beach district I've never heard of before, just some oddball stuff in there.
I'm asking,
Well, I'm gonna bless it tonight, no doubt. We'll get rid of that.
Middletown does have a.
So,
It's
Mr.
on
Gleason,
Jepson Lane.
so there is a forced sewer main from Lawrence Valley to Jepson Lane into Middletown. I don't know if you knew that, but that
I'm
is.
not, I thought I talked to the water department. They said they pump water from Lawton's Valley.
It's a
but-
forced sewer main. It goes from Union Street, down Jepson Lane, all the way to Middletown line,
From the Navy property.
from Lawton Valley.
Okay.
So there is a.
On
forced sewer main
Jefferson Lane?
On Jepson Lane going all the way
Jefferson
down.
Lane, it's stated Jefferson, that's a typo.
That's all I'm saying.
It's not, it's not structural. Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Ray's got his hand up again? Thought he was on vacation.
Just waving by.
This is just, we know that there are some changes that need to be made to the plan. We've actually submitted 8 pages of changes within the past couple of weeks. Middletown has done a lot, Newport has done a lot of comments going in there. So the draft that you're seeing right now, it does not include all of the public comments, but including additional comments by the planning staffs and the municipalities. We had initial big look at it as a planning team, but also there's been continual look at it from the planners and additional, things that are going to be made. So you're going to get a better draft before it actually goes to the state. And we can share with you with some of the changes that we provided pretty easily. So
Thank
Yep.
you, Ray.
Makes sense.
Appreciate
you're
it.
welcome.
Public hearing number 3. Request approval for proposed amendments to chapter 405 zoning to comply with the 2023 General Assembly statutory changes. We have a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. You're on again.
It's me again. Hi. With me tonight, I also have Jim Reardon from Weston and Sampson, who will give a very quick presentation on some of the changes that we've had to make from the General Assembly that has been going back to 2023. In September 2024, the Town Council approved what we termed the Tier 1 bills, meaning if the changes were not made at the local level to respond, state law would override local regulations and ordinances, and there would be repercussions. So we've already taken care of the more important bills and legislation back in September. Tonight, before you, we have what we termed the Tier 2 bills, meaning if the changes are not made at the local level to respond, state law will override local regulations and there will be little to no consequences. So in my memo to you, I have given you the specific bills, House and Senate version, that explain exactly the changes that we need to make based on state legislation. I will turn over the conversation to Jim Reardon.
Thank you, Ms. Hitchens. I have a brief presentation. My name is Jim Reardon. I'm from Weston and Sampson. Leah, thank you for introducing me earlier. So this is the required revisions to the zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, as was mentioned. Basic approach to this project involves 3 steps or 3 tiers. The first one, as was already mentioned, included specific language, but some flexibility for the town to include some of its own language and ideas. While this tier 2 needed to be pretty much verbatim from the state language, from the state general laws. And so that's why this is being implemented second, because that first step in the process wanted to make sure that we were able to take advantage of the flexibility, and the state didn't simply through the legislation that's been passed override what the town might otherwise decide to do. Tier 2 doesn't allow for that flexibility, and so that's why it's being implemented second. Just have to adopt this language as it is written, or the state language takes effect and does it for you anyways. Tier 3 will allow the town more opportunity to make changes, and we'll do a more thorough review of your existing policy and make updates accordingly. So how do we get there? There's sort of a 3-step process to each of these tiers: a review of local regulation to identify where changes need to be made, draft regulatory language that addresses those changes, and then public hearings for adoption. Those happen through the planning board, and of course through the town council is happening tonight. Planning Board hearing and advisory opinion were done on March 13th. And of course, tonight is March 24th, and it's the Town Council hearing. First step in this process, or first step in what we're going to review tonight, involves checklist updates. So there are now 3 proposed checklists that are part of this process. They include the DPR, Development Plan Review Checklist, the minor subdivision or minor land development checklist, which replaces the administrative subdivision and preliminary for minor subdivisions without new and or extended streets, and the preliminary application for major and minor land developments and subdivisions, including new and extended streets. And then the third checklist that we propose tonight is the major subdivision or land development checklist. And that replaces these 2 on the left, noted as the preliminary application for major and minor land developments and subdivisions, including new and extended streets, and the checklist for the master plan application for major land developments and major subdivisions. As a first step in this presentation, we'd offer an opportunity for any questions and comments on the checklists.
Any comments or questions from the council? Moving along, Mr. Erd.
Okay. Next step is changes to the zoning. And as mentioned before, these are pretty prescriptive. There really isn't any opportunity to adjust these significantly. So tier 2 bills, if the changes are not made at the local level to respond to the state law, the state law will simply override local regulations and ordinances without local action. And as you can see here, there are 7 bills that are, part of this process, part of this tier 2 process. So they include the Land Use Court, LMI Act, which is low and moderate income housing, the former SHAB or State Housing Appeals Board that was superseded by the Land Use Court. TOD pilot, which is sort of a placeholder at this point and will be created subsequently. So that's transportation-oriented development is what TOD stands for. Comprehensive plan, noticing requirements, and then House Bills 6061A and 6059A. It's just a series of definitions. So these are really pretty straightforward sections of the law. A little more detail here. So Land Use Court, this aligns language in the zoning with state consolidation of the land use appeals to Superior Court and the abolition of the State Housing Appeals Board, SHAB, as I mentioned before. The LMI adds and amends definitions associated with low and moderate income housing to align with enabling legislation. SHAB is simply removed. The Superior Court now takes precedent. Comprehensive plan. So this amends provisions of the Zoning Enabling Act of 1991 related to variances, special use permits, modifications, notice provisions, substandard lots of record, and lot merger. The noticing requirements. So again, this aligns with state requirements. You now use a local newspaper rather than a paper of general circulation. It's a little less expensive for communities. Notices to be posted or to be made available on municipal websites. Notice to abutters by first-class mail rather than certified mail. So again, a little less of an onerous process here for both the town and for the folks receiving these notices. standardizes notices across all types and applications, zoning, planning, et cetera, to the same methods and timeframes. Previously, there were some, I'll call them limited differences, but they weren't, you know, there were differences. So this eliminates that and thereby eliminates some noticing confusion. And then definitions. So this adds and amends definitions associated with LMI housing. That's primarily what it does. A few more items here having to do with definitions. So adds and modifies definitions to align with state enabling legislation. Article 4, district intensity regulations, requires modifications to be granted of 15 and up to 25% for various setbacks and so on. The non-standard development article, and so that involves merger provisions, non-conformance substandard lots of record. Again, amendments related to LMI housing, zoning board review. So this again amends noticing requirements, and then the adoption of the ordinance and amendments. So this amends again more noticing provisions that are in local and state law. Oops. And with that, we'll open it up to any questions and comments related to these.
Thank you, sir. I guess I'll just state that even if we didn't make these changes and a developer came in front of the planning board and asked for specific relief based on the new state law, they would be granted those reliefs in certain circumstances if we didn't make these changes anyway.
That's correct.
Yes.
So our hands are kind of tied anyway. So we're just marrying up to state law for the most part of these. And then
Exactly.
the tier 3 will be the more specific to our local community.
Yes, that's going to be a updating, modernization of the whole zoning ordinance, which is what I wanted to do when I first came here 3 years ago.
Well, you're getting there. Yeah.
Slowly but surely.
The age-old adage, how to eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time.
Absolutely.
All right. Any questions?
My question is,
Commissioner
what are the positive things and how these zoning changes affect Portsmouth?
What are the positive things?
I mean, it seems like all these are a mandate from general legislation.
Mhm.
And other than, to me, it seems the benefits are more low to moderate income housing.
Mhm.
But if you know of other benefits, I was just curious whether you could tell me.
Well, we're specifically talking about state language that is marrying up with, marrying the local language with the state language for this specific tier. The positives, notifying abutters no longer has to be certified mail. It's just regular mail. The intent is to make it easier to build housing and affordable housing with not as many restrictions.
I guess if you don't mind, Leah, I might add one more
Sure.
thing, which is that it aligns the local regulations and requirements with the state requirements, which, as the president mentioned, would be overruled anyways. And so the advantage of doing this tier 2 process now is pretty much to avoid confusion and to avoid being overruled by state requirements that you don't have any control over at all. This at least gives you the control of passing your own requirements and having them in your local standards and policy.
Thank you.
So we can't make requirements stricter than they currently are. These are pretty lax requirements, including the ADU requirement, which basically says you get 20,000 square feet, you can throw an extra half a house in your backyard. So
Yeah,
we
the way
can't-
it's written now, you just you just have to adopt these the way they are, or you get overruled anyways.
So that this General Assembly is taking local control out of the cities and towns' hands. You don't have to answer that. You're a consultant, I understand.
There are towns and cities.
I might be tempted to, but it wouldn't help much.
Mr. Mayor?
I'll just ask, it's more of a, want to kind of pick your brain on this one. Feel free to tell me, for the sake of going home, that you'll respond tomorrow. And the TOD or Todd, or whatever, I know that's kind of empty right now. How would that impact Portsmouth in terms of, I know it's about the state's transportation priorities, but I know that we just have something unique here in terms of the number of transportation options we have. So how would it impact us, and what does it envision to look like?
That's a great question, and the state is still looking at the TOD, transit-oriented development program. So I would like to think that it's a marrying of multi-use roadways, whether it be bikeways with vehicles, having a transit-oriented development, located within a certain proximity to parking or highways. There's still a lot of work to be done on the TOD, to be quite frank with you. We're just putting it in there at this point for a to be determined
Thank you.
input.
Appreciate it. Thanks. The public hearing, Mr. Fitzmaurice. Question, comment?
Thank you, Mr. President. Larry Fitzmaurice, 50 Crescent Court. I don't have any questions, just a comment. This is kind of like we're going down the road to despotism here. People that don't spend much time over here, and some of them never come over here, pass legislation in the assembly and take control of our zoning code. Article 13 of our state constitution grants us authority to do what we see fit within guidelines in the zoning code, in my opinion. And so, of course, the assembly doesn't really care what the Constitution says. Take it from me, I've watched them, and I know they don't. But the point is that this is the beginning of things, as well as a real pain in our zoning code. And we need to watch out more carefully with our legislative agendas and with our legislators, and expect them to tell us when these things are coming down the road again, because we're going to see more of this stuff. Because once they decide that they know better than we do about what goes on in Portsmouth, and they have, this is absolute proof of that, we're going to go further down that road, and we're going to see more of this stuff. I'm convinced of it. So they're going to start leading our whole lives for us after a while. If the state assembly really wanted to do something about affordable housing, there's one easy thing that they could reach for. And that is they could do something about some of the highest electricity rates in the country. They're high because the assembly keeps putting ties on us to pay for some agenda item that they've got. And that drives the cost of electricity up. Something fierce. And, if we want to worry about affordability and housing, that's one of them. Another one is do something about the businesses in this state. This state has continued to be, for the many, many years, the most hostile there is to small business. And they've made some changes. We've made some improvements in our taxing in this state. But, they are not really serious about affordable housing. They're just taking control of our local government here. And we're going to see more and more of it, as I've said repeatedly. And we're going to have to stand up to this at some point. And the people that have to stand up are the members of council here who need to keep control of this if we can, and stop it before it becomes a law. And nobody really told us this was coming. At least I never heard about it. And I know there's a number of laws, and they passed a bunch of them. And I don't recall hearing anything about them until they were passed. Which is the giveaway. That's the proof positive that they knew that they weren't going to be acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzmaurice. Any other questions or comments from the council? Any other comments from the audience? None online?
Motion to close public hearing.
You're reading my mind. There's a
Second.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And I know it's not, generally speaking, what the council wants to do, because these are taking away local authority, but if we don't do it, it's gonna save us money, because we don't have to send our solicitor upstate to fight these. It's in Superior Court if we don't pass them.
I think
Is the way I look at it.
Mr. Fitzmaurice is absolutely correct. You know, I'm a resident and an employee, so I have different opinions on multiple things, but there is this underlying wave as municipalities, town councils learn about all these changes that this isn't what a lot of communities want.
I agree with 100%.
I would agree with that as well. One of the things that we've never, I mean, kind of late in the game here, we should have done something when we had the first batch, if we were going to do anything at all. Because, you know, whether we agree with it or not, but we haven't really had any legal opinion presented to us that said, yeah, you got to do this, period, or this is going to happen. So I'm going to reluctantly approve this tonight or vote for it. But I feel like we've been backed into a corner, essentially, by our legislator. I hope that the changes that we make that benefit Portsmouth in general, I'll be happy about, as opposed to these generic state ones. So just my opinion.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve as presented.
Second? Anyone?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Ms. Hedgen. Next up, we have correspondence. We have a motion to receive and place on file.
Mr. President, I would like to just bring one, the last one for the
Bristol Ferry Town Common Creek?
yeah, if we could put that on the next agenda, please.
Okay.
Otherwise, you want to make your motion?
No, go on.
Yeah, a motion to place, receive and place on file, except for the last motion, which is
5.
5.
Second.
Okay. So receive and place on file items 1 through 4 and bring number 5 forward for next.
Yes, please.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Upcoming meetings, we have a 3-week break. So we don't come up again until April 14th. Then we have our regularly scheduled council meeting on the 28th, which will also have the budget overview. The 29th will have budget discussions, the 30th and May 1st if needed. We also, not under future meetings, we would like to avoid the meeting on July 11th. No, I messed it up. I'm going to skip the first meeting if this council approves, the first meeting in July, to give a break for staff vacations and the council vacations.
It's the 15th,
13th,
15th.
15th. So if we could have a motion to,
We gotta put it on agenda.
I'll put it on next week of that next agenda. So just start planning that. July 15th, 14th. You said 15th. The first meeting in July, we're not going to have. That's last year's? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes